Hello and welcome to our fourth session of our D&D campaign. Where we last left off, our heroes had just arrived within Termalaine and started to settle in, becoming acquainted with their surroundings, learning about the topography of the Wreckhead Glacier and orienting themselves with their task. Their objective: to locate 19 missing expeditioners who had somehow gotten lost on their destination towards the anomaly. Spending a night's rest within the Blue Clam Inn, you recovered your strength from the previous fights after an encounter with an adult-wise dragon, as well as some mysterious fish folk which had lain ambush to the five of you. After several hours of discovering within Termalaine, meeting with some local fellows of Termalaine, one of which comes by the name of Onug, a barbaric werebear. He has also introduced you to one of the original 20 lost expeditioners, Rongrim Dappleflight, a gnome professor who had been left behind as a means to forward further information between the expeditioners going north and relaying information to the Neverwinter Academy. And upon talking to him, he continued reinforcing this idea that the 19 expeditioners who had traveled north had completely disappeared. You've also made it a point to rummage around Termalaine, exploring a number of shops before you set out on your next quest. After discussing with Onug himself, he has brought to your attention about a certain goblin problem, which Termalaine and some of the nearby towns have been having a certain number of problems with. Onug went on to tell you that there is a faction of goblins residing within the Lonely Wood, an encampment of sorts, he mentioned, and that they are exceeding their boundaries. Where before they were not that much of a threat, nowadays these goblins are even engaging merchants and travelers alike along Bremen's Run, a road which leads north of Termalaine, adjacent to the Lonely Wood. You agree to his terms. That being that you would teach these goblins a lesson, and in return he would make it a point to reward you as best as he could, given the limited resources within 10 towns. That night, you went to rest for the second night within the Blue Clam Inn, and that is where we last left off. As the five of you snuggle into your beds, preparing for the next day's worth of travel, you close your eyes, you drift to sleep, and the night passes by, pretty much uneventful. At the early hours in the morning, you, with your passive perception, Craven, steer from your rest. Your eyes still groggy, your mind still fuzzy from your sleep. You come to consciousness just in time to realize that there is something wrong within your room. Within your room, within where you are resting. Like with your passive perception, even in the blanket of darkness which covers the room, with just a slight ray of light coming from the window outside as the sun begins to set, you can make out the prone figures of Frank snoring in one corner, as well as Vidas asleep and turned to one side, his back towards you. But something's wrong inside of you. Something just woke you up. What do you do?
I sit up and look around the room and stare at the sleeping bodies. I don't know what's wrong, right?
Not yet. You're not exactly sure what woke you up, to be honest, but you did wake up at a start. And you have this odd sense, this feeling that something's off.
I go check that the door is still locked.
You wake up, you pull aside the covers which kept you warm all night. As you get to your feet, you stride towards the door. And as you are approaching the door, you realize exactly now what is wrong. Usually where there is light coming from underneath the doorway from the corridor adjacent to your room, you realize that there is a silhouette outside the door.
I go to the nearest sleeping who's nearest to me and try to shake him up. I don't know who's sleeping closest to the bed.
Well, you see Frank laying adjacent to one side, snoring fast asleep. Whereas behind you there is Vidas, his back facing you.
Okay, I go to Vidas then. I'll try to shake him.
Vidas, you feel something steering you.
What? I believe there is someone lingering behind our door.
Who is it? Is
I
it
don't know, I have to check.
Maybe it's a bartender or something.
I don't know, I have a bad feeling about this.
Well, why don't you go check? Leave me to my sleep. He's not going back.
Vidas turns around, burying himself further into the blanket which was previously covering him, and you assume that he has fallen back asleep.
Okay, I go back to the door. Is this silhouette still behind?
With your passive perception, you still see that there is something behind the door, but as your hand reaches out, as you've said before, to check whether the door is locked or not, the silhouette moves to the left, as if it's moving further down the corridor.
I unlock the door quickly and I'll peer out.
And you peer outside. As you stare down the corridor, go ahead and actually, yeah. You realize that the figure moved in this direction. As you burst outside of the door, you see that there is no one else apart from you. The lights, the candles, 4 of them which illuminate this corridor, continue as they were, without a flicker.
I go start walking towards where the shadow was moving. Hold it up here.
Slowly, you trudge down the corridor. Ever so wary that at the far end of the corridor there is nothing but a dead end. A dead end, of course, and 2 other doorways, one of which you know is currently rented by Rongrim Dappelflight, whilst the other remains unknown to you.
I try both doors to see if any one of them is unlocked. Just
Which one do you try first?
I try this one.
You turn towards Rongrim's door. The lock is locked. It doesn't budge.
I try the other.
You turn towards the other. It doesn't budge either. It looks to be locked.
And what time is it? Is it at night?
At this point in time, there are no windows inside of here, but you do recall as you were waking up that there was the first beginnings, the first beginning of the sun's ray of light coming through your room window.
I investigate to just avoid tablet so you guys get confused at the end. Just to
You head all the way towards the far end. Oops. And can you adjust? Okay, please. And as you head towards the far end of the corridor, you come across a blank wall. Part of the tavern wallpapering. Tittered, torn. It's peeling off, basically. But
I just touch it confused.
with your passive investigation, you can't make out any sort of exit from here. It is a dead end to you. It looks like the corridor ends here. Tista' tgħidu fejn kien ta'? Le, tlantra tu. What do you do?
At this point, I'm used to seeing shadows in the distance, so I just brush it off as another episode.
You return back to your room, shaking your head. Still groggy with sleep, of course, but now part of you awakened. You pull the door behind you as you head into the room. And as you do enter back into your bed, you know that whatever few hours there is left for the others to wake up, there's probably no way that you're going back to sleep.
Also, I look at my fingers again, just because there were red chips on them before.
The red dirt, per se, still embedded underneath your unkept fingernails. Red paint. And again, you think back because you can't really remember where you had been painting, plus in the last few days or so, even weeks per se. You're not a painter by profession, for sure, and it's not a particular hobby which you entertain either. You are a scholar first and foremost. So again you question, why are your fingernails slattered with red paint? And slowly, you turn around. Questions running through your mind. The next few hours go by until the five of you eventually come out of your slumber, awakened by the occasional rooster call coming from outside the tavern, or perhaps the muffled sound of voices coming from the floor below you. What do you do?
So, Rodrigo takes off the bed sheets, right? And he takes a look around the room. He wakes up, stretches, and starts putting on his trouser and belt.
As you stretch, your massively muscled back ripples. And you, Jermaine, who is also coming to his senses, you wake up to this massive beast of a dwarf essentially putting on his clothes. His body is, I wouldn't say riddled with scars, but you've seen better. He is battle-worn, and his back is chiseled with countless muscle fibers. He puts on to himself a rugged fur cloak.
He doesn't put on his cloak, since they're not going outside for now. He's going to put his cloak, prepare it on the bed, right? And then what he's trying to do is there's some sort of reflective surface available in the room.
There is something which can come off as a mirror. It is unpolished, and you can make out some of the basic features of the reflection.
He starts searching within his trouser pockets, and he takes out a few brass rings, right? And he goes in front of this small reflective surface, and he starts braiding, not just fixing his beard with the rings, until he's satisfied, huffs in approval, turns towards Remy. You hungry?
As always, every morning.
Loved?
Of course. Let me put on my armor.
You don't need your armor. We're just going to have breakfast.
I don't trust the people in this town to go down them unarmed.
Perhaps you're right. Perhaps I should take my own axe. A good idea, lad. And Drummond turns around, goes, picks up his axe, and straps it to his back.
Your bareback. And slowly yourself, Jermaine, as you also belt yourself up, carrying your sheet alongside of you. I'm not sure whether you're carrying everything on you. Is that the case, or will you be just taking your sword along with you?
I'm taking my sword and shield and my equipment. I believe my back will be powered.
Very well. The two of you open the doorway outside.
I secure my money to my belt. I don't trust the bartender.
Do you think he'll come up here and steal our gold?
He's already tried to steal our gold once.
Couldn't hurt. I do the same as well.
The two of you walk outside, knocking on the doorway adjacent. The three of you, including Frank, I assume have already woken up a few minutes earlier, and you're already sorting out your own agenda. What do you do?
My just wakes up. Trying to tackle the day. Who is it at this time of morning? And I walk towards the door. I open it. I see the bareback dwarf.
You don't see the back, you see the front.
As you open the door, you're met with a massive two-handed axe facing you. A dwarf of small stature who seems to be talking about money, about some sort of theft going on within the tavern, to your ally Jermaine. And as the door swings open, you turn around in full view of Vidas.
What?
Time for breakfast.
Yes, we're coming down.
Of course. Come on.
I close the door back in his face and walk out back into the room. And I start donning my armor.
I usually keep everything back, so the first thing I do, I go check the cloak if it's finally clean.
The black velvety cloak is now in much better condition than you had left it. The stains of blood, as well as the occasional piece of snot which had accumulated onto this cloak, are now wiped clean to your relief. It looks almost good as new, except for some couple of old stains which have been there since the very beginning, and you've tried time and time again to rid yourself of them. But no, alas, they remain there. But apart from that, it is clean.
I know the approval that unseen servant was not useless after roll the tent in my pay and start preparing for them down.
Frank follows you as you open the door, and as you
We've left it this way.
and yes, the corridor has been vacated. Vidas, you see both Frank and Craven walking away from you. Vidas, what do you do?
As soon as I don my armor, I follow them
Yeah.
downstairs to get some breakfast.
And as the three of you depart from your room, closing the door behind you, I assume, you clamber down the stairways of the tavern in full view of this morning's audience. The tavern is completely vacant, except for the bar owner himself. Your allies, Jermaine and Dranril, already seated by a table. A lonely bard stringing away at a lute in the far corner of the tavern, as well as some other two bystanders who are either drunkenly asleep, sprawled out on one part of the tavern, or just gazing at the fireplace there, and the occasional bar server.
I go towards the bar table and some breakfast please will be over there, and I head to the empty table which is saunter over.
The bar owner nods, and you see him already rummaging about some few plates which are hidden from your perspective but are arrayed behind the bar barrier.
I give him the evil eye.
As the three of you join the rest of your friends by the table, and you seat yourself, you see the dwarf gazing intently from the corner of one eye, intently towards the bar owner. And in a few minutes' time, as the bar owner walks around the corner bearing a platter of plates, and he lays them in front of you. You also see Rongrim Doubleflight, who has also waken up and joined you. He walks in this direction and takes a seat by the table.
Good morning, Professor.
Good morning, friends. I hope you had a good night's rest, especially that you intend to travel out today.
Rested as well as we could. Even the cold.
Where is the food before we think of going outside?
In front of you are several plates of watered down porridge. Accompanying that, there is a small mug of milk served to each one of you, as well as a small platter in the middle with dried fruits and berries.
Fruits and berries.
That is what has been served.
Is the bartender.
He has departed entirely, and he seems to be doing some other chores.
I go towards the
I will try to see if it's still fresh.
So Vaidis, you put the glass of milk close to your nostrils. You look at it suspiciously. What is the substance that you are being served here? You've never tasted this before. It smells strange to you. This white liquid.
What is this jamming?
I am familiar with milk. You've never had milk before. You don't have cows. Where you're from? You don't.
I'm trying to remember what these strange creatures are.
Your children, what do they feed on when they're young?
They feed on the blood of their enemies.
Oh, by the gods!
That's joking.
Can you rearrange the wire? It's glitching a bit. Adjust the wire from the source of the camera. Maybe it's pinched.
This one,
No, that one. The one at the back.
the one at this one.
this I think.
Technical difficulties. Am I sorted?
Meanwhile,
I just take a swig of the milk and move.
those go. Okay. As the two of you are discussing milk, the dwarf is clearly upset with something as he stares towards this glass of milk which has been set in front of him. And as if he's been shown some sort of slight, he wakes up with a huff and storms over towards the barkeep.
What's the breakfast?
What do you mean, my friend?
What's the breakfast?
I just gave it to you.
The eggs, no meat. What's the breakfast?
My friend. He's clearly lost for words.
So is it okay?
Rudrell, come over here, have some of this milk.
Milk.
Yes, my dwarf. What else were you expecting? This is just a humble breakfast being served as is the norm for all the people settling here.
Do you have meat?
Meat is usually served during dinner.
Meat for dinner. Of course you have meat for dinner, but so you will have meat for lunch and meat for breakfast.
What are you asking of me?
Meat for breakfast.
Make a persuasion check.
With advantage. That was quite good.
I echo his sentiment. Meat for breakfast. Does he have advantage?
Gabriel. He will do
This, yeah.
persuasion. So that is
Bara u dim.
So as you stare intently towards the barkeep, clearly you have struck a note or something because his facial features are turning red. You assume that probably this bar owner seldomly serves dwarfs, especially around here. And after a few seconds of delay, he stutters. That is okay, I'll see what I can find in my pantry.
It's good. Perhaps some ale, not too strong. Not too strong. You won't serve your best. Listen, I know we have had our differences over these last few days. Is there any stool over there?
We have?
Is there any stool?
You drag one over from the nearest
I grab one
table.
over, and I said, I will teach you. For breakfast, it is good to serve an elf or a gnome some, what was that? Leaves?
Porridge.
Well, whatever it was. I do not care. It is good to serve such beings this food. But for dwarves, men, you know, beings of a southern nature, we require meat. And not just for dinner.
I'll be honest with you, I rarely serve these in the morning. Usually I charge people who request additional services some extra penny to account for...
How is your business doing? Do a lot of people come here?
Look around you, dwarf.
Not much.
Is this just the 5 of you?
If you are serving me for breakfast, you would have twice this many people in the morning.
But the logistics involved, serving meat 3 times a day, it's unthinkable around these parts.
My family used to run, are still running, their own splitting enterprise. I know a thing or two about business, my friend, although I myself am not cut out for these things. But, you start selling meat, a few people come, they are attracted, they say food for breakfast. Finally, an establishment well worth our time. They will buy your breakfast. You will get more money. You will get more money to buy more meat. You will buy more meat to have more breakfast.
In the background you hear a huge slurp as you see Vidas pouring himself another glass of milk from the jug provided.
Of course, you will still keep on buying this milk and leaves and porridge, you said?
Porridge.
Oh, it's not important. You will keep on buying that for people like that, you know? But you get more meat, you get more customers, you get more meat. It is the great wheel of business, my friend.
As you go over this business plan, which clearly as a dwarf you've thought in and out, make a persuasion check to see how well the bartender is following you. He stutters, as if he's thinking deeply. He says, if I were to get some meat brought into Termalaine, I see where you're going with this. Of course there are logistic issues which I need to think around, but maybe you're onto something here.
Of course I am. My family owns the best business.
Meat business. Smithing. So, is smithing that far off from owning a meat business?
Same principles. Smithing, metal, meat, same thing.
Okay. I'll...
My friend, as I said, I have forgiven my grudge towards you is not existent. I realize now that you are a man in need of help. And I am that help.
Am I? In need of help?
You have brought us porridge for breakfast.
Look, I'll see what I can do about the meat issue. Starting from now. Give me a few minutes.
You know what? I've given you advice that is worth more than money. I'm going back. And I jump off the stool and start heading back towards the table.
You're in control, and I pour him a glass of milk for drink. Taste this. It's very good. Very nutritious.
You smell the wretched liquid, and it smells off to you. What is this substitute for ale? Even if it was water, it would have been an insult to you, let alone this, whatever this is.
I take out my closed air tanker, portable air tanker from my backpack. I don't have it. I don't have a backpack. It's upstairs.
Yep.
It was upstairs.
I sip the milk.
You taste it.
Constitution say we know.
It is. It has the texture of water, and it's definitely a faraway taste compared to ale or beer. It is strange. It's something which you would have to take some time to grow accustomed to.
I take more sips and take a larger gulp.
The taste and texture does not change, and slowly you force yourself to take further of this drink.
I do enjoy it.
I drink the whole, I don't know what was brought to us, pitcher of milk.
Already half of it being consumed by the rest of the table, you down the remainder of it.
Hey, leave some for the rest of us.
More milk, bartender.
I thought you wanted ale, as you hear.
You're bringing ale.
Players
Yes, very good.
clattering in the background.
Very good.
I can go ahead and I say, don't bring in fish from the lake.
From behind the bar shelf as well, you hear, "Oh, now you want fish as well then? Isn't meat enough?"
It's fish meat.
No. There are
He looks up and says, "Wait, fish is a possibility? That's meat?"
Not as breakfast, my friend. Not as breakfast. Meat. Not fish. Meat.
Meat.
Do not confuse the poor lad.
Meat. He continues back towards what was here.
If you're willing to sell fish from breakfast, I'm all for it. It is more sustenance, and sustenance that we need, especially in this cold.
There is not just sustenance of the body, but also sustenance of the spirit. That is what meat is. Today. My good man, I point towards the bartender. My honesty is still rummaging for food.
He seems to be still preparing something.
Will not distract me.
At least for now, we'll have a substitute for meat. Is he serving us meat?
Yes. I am quite convinced.
I never thought a dwarf would be able to convince someone like that without flashing steam.
No need for such drastic measures. This is a time for celebration.
Speaking of meat and food in general, are you well provisioned for the journey ahead of you? Have you made it a point to carry some rations for the journey ahead?
Ah, yes, rations.
Yes, I have rations in my room.
I need to check.
I would be very careful to take as much as you need.
I need to check. My mother has packed me some lunch before we left off for this venture.
Oh, and also make sure that you carry with you ample clothing and equipment to light fires, perhaps even encampments to pitch, especially if you intend to take more than one night out there.
Yes, don't worry, Professor. We will be fine. There's just some.
Good. I just want to be sure that you do not underestimate the cold.
He's right, some goblins are dangerous here. The weather.
Not to worry. I have 10 days worth of rations.
Yes. Also, I have 10 days of rations along with my water skin.
Does everyone else have a cover for exposure against the elements at night? Tents, pitch.
I've got bedroll. I've got bedroll.
If your bedroll is not enough.
Would you mind buy some leather, some extracts that I said zinc during the
I bought a tent for myself from the town hall.
Perhaps we can stop there then and buy some.
How large is your tent?
It is large enough for 2 people, but perhaps for you it would only fit 1.
Perhaps we need 2 more tents then. Perhaps.
I am sure that you'll be able to find some sort of merchant shop here within Termalaine before you head out. Meanwhile, the bar owner has come back now with a platter of grilled bits of bacon served on one single plate, served in the middle, as well as bearing now what seems to be a huge or a mini tankard which is set in the middle of the table, to your relief, smelling of ale. He taps a hand on your shoulder. I'll think about your advice.
Smart man.
He moves off.
Smart man, big business.
That was long.
As you're feasting yourselves on bits of bacon rashers as well as some dried husks of bread, you notice that Onug has just entered the front door over there. He enters inside, shifting snow off his own fur pelt, closes the door behind him. And he walks off towards the nearest table to him, raises his hand, signaling the bar owner. As he sees himself, the gnome adjacent to you tells you in a hushed whisper, "You've talked with Onug already, right? He was the one who has commissioned you for this goblin run of sorts that you intend to do. Just a reminder to you not to get lost from your original goal here. I encourage you to run the occasional errand of sorts and such, but keep things into perspective."
This is a warm-up for the great adventure that we are about to embark on.
It is good that you think about it like this, yes. The last thing you'd want to do is head out into the Redhead Glacier unprepared.
Now you're thinking about work.
Thank you. Slowly, as you finish your own plates, the bar owner comes back, cleans your table, leaving the 6 of you seated by the table. What would you like to do?
Time to head out and buy some fence.
Let's move. I take any milk that's left and then fill it into my water skin from the water we get.
Unfortunately, the dwarves did not leave any more to you, but there is some leftover ale, it looks like.
I fill it in with ale, it's the same thing.
As you wake up, the 5 of you heading towards the main door, you walk by the seated Onug, the werebear, who senses your presence moving past here. He turns around and says, "Morning to you! Good morning. I see that you are up and about. That is good."
Morning, Onug. We are heading out to buy some tents for our adventure to the goblin camp.
Indeed, very good.
Will you be attending?
Unfortunately not. It is good that I have met you here on my way out of Termalaine. I will not be around here for today. In fact, not for the following week, most probably.
Harrowing, might we ask?
Further up into 10 towns. I will visit one village at a time, spreading the word of what has transpired here with the dragon attack.
Perhaps you can leave with us and then be on my way.
You are heading through Bremen's run, am I correct?
Isn't 10 pounds north?
Oh, no, my friend, you have it all wrong. Termalaine is the northernest town. Bremen's run takes you further north. I will be heading further south. But at least it is what I intend to do. After what has transpired with the dragon attack, the last thing we would want to happen is to face another dragon attack against possibly one of 10 towns itself. An unprepared village, that is.
We'll see you later.
I should hope so, yes. I will come back and check on your progress as you go by.
Well then, let's head out.
and I had towards the door.
Wait. We've just finished from eating, right? So I don't have my hand.
No.
I need to get my coat. And run ties up the steps.
As the four of you wait, what do you do?
I was holding it.
Jermaine also departs.
It's confusing. These dwarven names, I cannot understand their calligraphy.
The two of you collect your belongings. You open the door, and in a few seconds' time, you are once more prepared to head back down. You pull the door behind you, hurry back down the wooden steps, and rejoin your allies who are waiting outside the Blue Clam Inn. The five of you, gathered outside of the tavern, find yourselves in the middle of Termalaine. Would you please move the board further down and place your minis instead on the middle hex of the map?
So,
You call that front as well.
and the professor isn't coming with us, no?
No, he will remain within the Blue Clam Inn.
Ah,
Yeah, you can just leave everything there, just remove the minis and move everything shifted downwards. Perfect. That's good enough. And all of you are gathered exactly in the middle there. Now, to go over the basic rulings, Matthew, the way the map works within a town area works relatively the same like you would as if you are moving to the other map. And the only difference here is that each hex represents an hour's worth of time of stay within the town. Now, the hour is not like indicating like that the vast distances that there are to cover within the town. It is just a very rough measure of time, roughly how long you will be staying within the town at any point in time.
I see. So, for example, if I have an event in this house, it would be an hour, generally speaking.
No, so to traverse towards that particular building, 2 hours of time would have passed in general. Each one of you, as you traverse the town, will be keeping his own track, his own counter. And then when you do depart from the town, we'll take the highest counter to see how much hours in total you've stayed within Termalaine.
So, for example, to get town hall and out, and I assume that to get out, we can't just do this. We need to go to the opening over there, right? Yeah, go to Bremen's round.
That's right.
Okay, so that would take us 1, 2, 3. Then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours.
Well, you need to actually traverse into the town hall.
Yeah, so that would be 1, 2, 3,
4, town hall,
4. Ah, okay, 4, so 10 hours in all.
more or less.
Jeez.
Yes, we need to go to the Onug, no?
No, we need to go to Bremen's round.
Okay.
Or maybe
No, we're not heading directly for the
or maybe
camp,
we
so
should leave at the afternoon. Or like before the day.
Wait, we're not
we
heading
will be leaving.
We're not heading to the goblin camp.
No, we're not. We're not leaving.
Not to go.
It's an ambush. It's a reverse ambush, and not reverse.
Yes.
Very well. Sure, I have
You don't need the sense of the road.
I mean,
Now, as you are gathered in front of the Blue Clam Inn, I should add, Frank has already is already tending to the donkey and the cart that he bought. He rented actually the donkey, but he bought the cart from the previous day. I believe so.
I think he paid for it and gets his money.
That's right. Yes, because Onug successfully managed to convince one of the local townsfolk to lend you his donkey. But as an insurance policy, he asked money up front.
I have 4 gold is listed in those donkeys. Or you so whatever.
You've also bought a sack of donkey feed, which you are keeping within the small wagon.
On the front of the are there any empty crates or
With your passive perception, you do make out that the tavern is pretty much lined up with a frontal fence, and inside of it there is a wooden wood shed rather, and underneath it there are some emptied crates and 2 smashed barrels.
Like perhaps we should borrow some of these, just to make them more like we're merchants.
Yeah.
Perhaps, yes, we should disguise ourselves as merchants.
I have the perfect disguise.
What is your disguise?
I climbed up the wagon. Not the wagon, the car.
The wagon, you realize as you enter the backside, is surprisingly small. And you gaze at Frank, who is in the lead of the wagon, already seated to take control of the reins. And you realize that, from a matter of perspective, the wagon is big for the halfling, but not so big for a human or perhaps a dwarf of your stature. Don't get me wrong, you can still fit inside the backside around 2 people, as well as some of the other slight belongings, such as the sack of donkey feet. But it doesn't really fit any more than that.
I like them.
Yes, indeed.
I like them.
I go grab a couple of empty crates and put them around.
You realize that the crates themselves are quite small. So you start out with the remnants of the barrels, which you lay hands on. And so you push them into this already small carts, trying to conceal as best as you can the dwarf inside, and then stash on top of that any other open crates which you find.
Is there any more space next to the dwarf or someone else to hide?
Now stashed with the dwarf as well as the new equipment that is inside of it, you realize that it would be a very tight fit. Perhaps the halfling would be able to fit inside at this point, though Frank is already gathered at the front.
I think we should try to reduce our numbers as much as possible, so that the goblins would be sure to take the bait. If we are to walk with swords and shields in our hands, I think it would be an issue.
Yes.
But we still need them to be readily available.
We can scope them side to side. Next to Drundrin.
The brother is currently face down on the car.
I take my
Like this, covered with his cloak.
I take the weapons which are not which are readily visible, like my shield and my sword. My handaxe and dagger are tucked behind my gear, let's say. And sword them underneath the what's the tarp?
Yes, yeah. You slide them in parallel to the dwarf. Your shield and sword?
Yes.
Okay.
Careful where you put those then. When was the canal?
I saw them next to his equipment.
Very well. The 2 of you, Jermaine and Vidas, you feel yourselves now a bit more, what's the word for it?
Naked.
No, not naked. You feel that you might pass off as just mere travelers or merchants, perhaps more travelers rather than merchants. And yes, you do feel a bit more convinceful about this aspect.
Do we think we need to buy tents or shall we leave now?
How long do we think this journey will take?
I mean, if they don't take the bait, we can come another day. We need to leave now.
That is the best we can do.
I think that 10 hours is quite a long time to buy some tents.
Again, it's just a measure roughly of how much time you've spent in town. It doesn't necessarily mean you've spent an hour buying a couple of tents. It is assuming that on your way going towards the tents, you met with some new people, or you remembered that you were lacking something else that you needed to buy.
But if we say we just go and buy the tents and head out,
It will still take roughly 10 hours. That is the game mechanic that we're going to use.
let's move now. Leave the tents.
We're a very talkative party. Very social.
I mean, we've been discussing whether we should go to the town
Conversations. So I think we should straight for.
Okay, let's walk. And I start moving towards the road.
Very well.
I don't have any option.
So within about 4 hours later, after you've risen, 4 hours from the beginning of the day. So if you collectively woke up at around 6 o'clock. You've set out from Termalaine at around 10, give or take. You start making your way up Bremen's run. So we'll just replace the map, the one which is above, we'll start using the one below now.
Shall we put this underneath the other one, or do
You can remove it for now. I'm not sure whether we'll be using it further this session. Yeah, and all of you are within
we have
Bremen.
a card maybe for an indicator of where we are, and then we'll have all the minis on a single space?
We could. We'll bring the card.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Not that. I don't need that.
Lagen of quality.
Skużani, nie wiem, minnom, bo after sure, ma lektor minute video.
Oh, good. Even better. Even better. Good.
Jeden argument about So would this be the first square out of Termalaine now?
So, that's right, you are entering the first square.
And we're going to start moving around Bremen's.
That's right. So, I will need, in general, marching order for your characters as you traverse during the coming days.
What's the rest of survival?
You know, survival.
You're from.
I'm going to remain right for all this.
3 days later.
Use your minis though to indicate like how you're moving, and please put them in perspective of the camera if you can.
So yeah, sure.
Though I'd suggest you keep them off the hexes of the map because you're going to cloud everything.
Put
So
them over here.
yeah, either put them there and keep them in focus of the camera, and
Plus these.
We're on the card. He's driving it. No. Where should be in front? Okay. So I guess you.
We can put it the other way.
So let me put it like horizontally, just so we're good.
If we stay on the opposite side of the forest, maybe they will be more likely to attack since they were kind of distorted by the card. Wrongly.
Okay. Alright. So that would be something like this then. So this would be the card, yeah?
So it will be less visible.
And Bremen's run is this over here.
So we're walking beside the cart.
So you're walking beside the cart, precisely. Yeah, I'm trying to keep to the as much as close to the cart as possible. So they hide themselves.
the cart is usually ahead, beside you. Who is on the cart? Just.
So
Andrea just said
Trump is on the car driving it, right? As well steering it.
So let's do something. Get the wagon off. Use a die roll over there, like a dice to mark where you are traveling, and use the wagon. Good.
What's the problem?
Let me get the donkey.
Oh, yeah.
And donkey.
Is it in perspective? You can use the camera maybe to get closer.
So Drundel's in the wagon, and they're beside it. Okay, you can't really hide yourselves.
very fast.
Yeah, and we're over here.
Okay.
Actually, since you're in front, I cast minor erosion on you. To make you look like a goblin.
To make it look like a merchant.
To make you look like a bitch.
Actually, then I can keep my weapons on.
I can say so. I
Alright. And you have to cast every minute.
I keep focus on you to keep casting it on.
Illusion.
I will keep my weapons on me, and he will cast minor illusion on me to make me look like a merchant.
Okay, and that's a cantrip, right? Okay. So, over the exact same day, you depart from Termalaine. The music.
We're going to start running for random encounters now, no? On every square.
That's right.
So we're going to Guys, Jane Dragon encounters. Jane Dragon. Perfect.
I have a plan to handle the dragon.
Standard with swords.
No, it's much more sophisticated than that.
Standard with skills.
Standard with this.
Agree. Definitely. Definitely. Dish of design.
What's your plan? How are you doing?
But it's going to be
It's a secret plan.
First we reveal our plan to handle the dragon, before the dragon comes. The code says.
Oh, I have to it's just
You can. It's hidden from view. They have a canopy to protect me from the enemy.
The back of the wagon is covered with a roof.
Good then.
They did, but it's the jail.
Just up and on.
Sorry. What are we going to do?
And this is the fort from Termalaine, setting out in the late hours of the morning. You make your way north through Bremen's run. The weather holds up relatively well for the first couple of hours, but then you realize that the skies above start turning a light shade of grey. Slowly, you feel drizzles of rain coming down. And you head further north. The weather is tolerable. It's not great, but regardless, it does not hamper you, none whatsoever. And as the hours go by, you see Termalaine growing smaller and smaller until eventually you no longer see it. Bremen's run, you realize, is a road. It is relatively well. You can clearly make out that it is some sort of common merchant route of sorts. Driving the wagon through here is not that troublesome, or perhaps as troublesome as you might have expected given the foreign nature of these parts. You continue onwards, and eventually, as you depart from Termalaine completely, with the town no longer in sight, the only other company that you have covering your flank is the massivity, which is the Lonely Wood. The Lonely Wood was already visible back in Termalaine, but now, as you continue onwards, it covers your entire left flank. It is vast, and you realize are just walking past the fringes of the wood itself. Whilst the weather continues with light rain coming down, Frank takes the reins, taking the lead for the most part, navigating the beast of burden through this lone road further north. You see that covering the sides of the road are banks of snow. The road itself covered with snowfall itself, presumably from the storm a few days ago itself. The wood to the left of you is also covered with a blanket of snow. It is spread out, sprinkled as if like some fine powder on the countless pine woods and pine trees which dominate the forest. On the right hand side, it is open ground, also covered with endless snow, and also dominated with the occasional pine tree of sorts, which you realize the road itself is, although it is moving on the fringes of the forest, you are still technically moving through the forest, though obviously on its perimeter. The day goes by quicker than you expected, and nightfall comes quite quickly. As the sun sets down, what do you do?
I pitch a tent and I settle inside.
The runner has already slept at this point.
As you open the cart, taking out your belongings and backpacks and camps, you realize that the dwarf had not come out of the wagon for the entire day. And the part of you thinking him dead, Jimmy, and as you take out your tarp, you do actually feel for a pulse for a second there, double checking on the dwarf, who is snoring, surprisingly, quite silently.
Well, he's still alive, fortunately for us. Dwarf. He's asleep. Hopefully he's protected from the elements in the building.
It's not quite a good call.
Fair enough.
If I just takes any spare part of the tarp, can find and unrolls his bedroll and sleeps on a place where there isn't much snow.
My tent can fit one more. Excellent.
Front can sleep with the dirty pocket. But front and the front.
So the two of you you essentially pitched two tents, is that correct?
That's a 2%.
One 2-person tent. Still leaves another 2 people though without a tent, right?
One, we're 5 people, no?
So you're
Front can fit, we're sleeping
in the wagon?
I'm sleeping outside only.
Okay.
And the donkey.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm not going to start first.
That's why we need the dog.
Before we head in, I set up an alarm to be audible for everyone if anything comes.
But I take a tarp and I have my bedroom. And I'm sleeping with my arms.
I'll keep the name that iPhone short.
Why they're sleeping with arms?
20 by 20.
What it does, I believe, is you don't restore exhaustion.
We will need to check actually.
I checked from Xanatars and all it says you regain up to a quarter of your hit dice and you don't regain exhaustion.
Okay.
If you sleep with medium or heavy armor.
Fair enough.
Something like that. But if that's the case, I sleep with my armor.
Yeah.
20-foot cube.
And you're sleeping outside?
As close as possible to them.
Yes, of course.
But outside, if I can find a place where there is no some shelter from the woods.
Make a survival check if that's the case.
17.
17, you don't find any immediate shelter, and given that situation, you make it a point to try and find as much loose twigs and pieces of bark, as well as scattered leaves, to make a rough shelter. Like within an hour's worth of time, you've assembled something very quickly together, but you feel that it will be adequate enough to at least avoid some of the light downpour of rain.
And before I go to sleep, I tell them perhaps it would be good to set up a watch. I can take the first 2 of us.
I'll take the next.
I'll take the third set of floors.
And then Frank can possess the last, since the dwarf is fast asleep.
He agrees.
Whatever.
So who takes the first watch?
I will.
You lay there in your own sleeping bag, covered with bits of dirt, soil, wood, and trees. And leaves.
To pass the time, I take out my very master-crafted dragon chess set, and just like old times, play some moves on my own, trying to learn the tactics of how to apply this intricate and long-lost game to my battles in the future, to sharpen my mind. And I guess after half an hour, I pack it back up, and I remember that I had a snow globe that I collected from one of the battles.
That's right.
And they investigate the snow globe, trying to turn it around, see what's happening. How does it look like inside?
There are a few miniature trees, which you can count on your on your own 5 fingers. And apart from that, there are loose bits of rock. It looks like a very generic snow globe, and the fact that there is nothing special per se about it, except for the snow gimmick that there is as you kind of turn it around and shake it about
Okay.
but it is a cute trinket, which somehow satisfies some part of you.
I put it back inside my bag after having noticed those fine details of the solo. And finally, I open back out the book that I had, the unfettered one, and I just
You start thinking.
I start reading because Frank is calling me from the wagon.
Frank is calling us.
Yes.
As a 2% tent.
That's what you wanted to say.
And you can prepare these.
But I think out the unfettered mind book, and I just peruse its text, trying to, I don't know, maybe somehow recollect.
Before I respond, we should probably put up Twitch chat in parallel to OBS there, so you can see if anybody's sending anything.
I have it on my
Cool.
laptop.
So you pull out the book, trying to kill time as best as you can, and you realize by this that none of you lit a fire this night, so you can't really make out exactly what's inside of the book, to be honest, unless you have dark vision, which to my knowledge
No, as a
Git don't
Unfortunately,
possess that ability.
Perhaps I decided it's maybe better to just keep a watch and argue by next to the tree.
Who takes the next watch? So as the next couple of hours go by, Vidas shakes you up from your sleep. You wake up groggily, and the Git Yankee goes back into his makeshift shelter.
Doug, what?
You wake up.
3?
What do you do as you do?
I head out.
You're the best, buddy.
Have a quick look around. One man sit by the wagon, staring at the forest. As I'm doing that, I got the book that I got from the cleric, and just ponder about the previous night's vision.
The amulet from the cleric?
Now from that story.
I see, okay. As you hold it in your hand and you scan the darkness outside, you are conscious of the fact that there is limited light out here. Your human eye is unable to make out anything but the lit star sky up above you. The occasional tree silhouette which shakes silently in the distance. The occasional breeze which comes through. And of course, the occasional background pattern of light rainfall coming down. You feel isolated. Even now, just perhaps a day's worth of ride outside of Termalaine, but you immediately now can grasp you can already grasp the concept of how isolated not just Icewind Dale is, but what lies beyond Icewind Dale. The next couple of hours go by uneventful. And who do you wake up next?
You're right. I head back in the tent and check. Wake up, it's your turn.
Yes.
Truthfully, at this point, it had been asleep for most of the day. Do I need to roll randomly to see whether he wakes up at any point in the night?
Not really. Like, you are enjoying the comfort of the wagon, to be honest. Like, unless you specifically want to do something,
No, it's fair.
you would rather prefer your chances inside of here rather than head out into the icy cold weather outside.
So those few moments when Drunlin wakes up, he just snuggled asleep and into the scope.
I see Drunlin snuggling in the back of the wagon and wish I was in his space. I take my place next to the wagon and looking into the woods, first thing I do is I try to bury my weapons beneath the snow so that whoever's looking at us, if they are, they wouldn't see my weapons, they would see just myself.
Using your own hands, you dig a small hole into the snow on the side of the road, I suppose, where there is actually a bit of depth into the snow. And you put in your sword and shield. Anything else?
No, that's it. I just cover them with a very thin
you cover it with a thin blanket of snow, so that at a moment's notice you'll still be able to plunge your hand into the makeshift duck hole and be able to.
Yeah, take a notice.
What do you do then?
And I sit down and I look into the forest. As I look into the forest, I realize that we're very vulnerable. However many goblins there are, even just a few of them could come out and shoot arrows at us, and we wouldn't even know where they're coming from. So I try to think of a way to maybe light up the perimeter, and as I think of that, I take out my torches and I place about 3 torches on the perimeter of our building.
As you sift through your backpack, opening it up, you take out 3 bits of tinder. Just as you're about to ignite them, your own passive insight hesitates you for a second. You realize, before you actually ignite the first one, that they will also have a counter effect, that they will also light up a target of the 5 of you here. So with that flash of insight, as you're about to light them up, do you still proceed?
After all, that is our goal, to get them to attack us, but perhaps not when we're on asleep. So I rethink and I sit back next to my weapons. Maybe it would be safer to just hide rather than reveal myself.
With that in mind, the next few hours slowly go by. With whom do you wake up next?
I wake up with Drunel.
General, you don't take that much time to wake up.
He's been asleep for 16 hours.
When I get off again, but I'm not keeping track of time.
Your legs won't be able to carry you next time you wake up.
This is a good point.
Exercise yourself.
Can I kind of sit up in the wagon?
Yes, you do. It isn't that small.
And then see-through, no?
There are some windows on the sides, yes.
So can I stand watch from within the wagon with my coat huddled around me?
Sit watch.
We will sit watch next.
Very well. But be prepared to be on the move. The moment you notice any danger. Words are well known for speaking. I pick up my weapons that were buried in the snow and I get back inside my tent.
Drunel sits up, gathers his coat around him, and keeps watch through the windows.
You sit there, biding your time, and with your acute sense of dark vision, you feel less exposed than, say, somebody else. You feel confident enough, is what I mean, that should somebody come out running from the forest, you'd be able to make him out at a much more further distance during the night than maybe somebody else. Continuously though, you try and keep yourself up awake. Not a hard thing to do, considering that you've rested yourself up quite adequately during the last couple of days in Termalaine, as well as today itself, where your allies have been walking all this time. You have essentially spent it within the carriage, recovering as best as you can your own strength. Though of course all of that comes with its own consequence, and you do feel a bit restless and bored, having not moved around all that much. And your mind starts wandering and thinking, as it would of when spending some time doing nothing but staring and waiting. And specifically, you have like a certain sense of mixed feelings about leaving Termalaine. Something which has been nagging you all this time, all these last few hours since you've left the town. Because although a part of you knows that you have a job to do, the other part of you is still a bit fearful about the attack which you had suffered 2 days ago. These Kuo-toa, as so mentioned by the gnome. The fish people had shown a particular interest in you, as you recall, and that they had come out isolating you specifically from the rest of your party. Your mind goes back to that particular point in time. You still kind of shudder at the thought of these oily-like creatures, inhuman but human at the same time, as they came at you through the blizzard, weapons at the ready, nets dragged behind them, intent on taking you alive to God's nowhere. You shake that thought out of your mind, shuddering impulsively. Then another thought harkens to you. What is your next move? These fish people which ambushed you, a part of you thinks, did they leave any clues behind? Would it be worth your while to convince yourself as well as your allies perhaps to head back towards there? To see, again, whether there's any other evidence which could lead you to understanding two questions. Why did they single you out? And how did they know that you were going to be there? Are they related? And the 2 hours go by, bringing you to the end of your watch. What do you do?
The Rotterdam can't sleep anymore. So, at this point, how many hours have passed?
So
it's been a 2-hour watch for each of us, for all of us, right?
That's right, so roughly 8 hours. So we will say more or less, did you plan to include the Frank in your watch? Because it depends how much.
Not really.
Okay. We'll say though, each one of you still collectively manages to gather 8 hours worth of sleep. You wake up the next day at the early hours of dawn, preparing yourself for the next day's worth of journey. What do you do as you wake up?
Check out my things. I also have Frank that I present, and hopefully Loser casts minor illusion on me again.
Perhaps we should eat something. It's been a day.
Yes, I agree.
I agree as well, and I take out some of I eat some of my day sessions.
Explore spectacular.
The Russians, they basically last for today, right? So
That's right.
some morning and some
That's right. So each one of you needs to deduct 1 packet of ration. In addition to that, I need you, Vidas, to give me a Constitution saving throw with advantage.
honey.
Who's the bird? I think you can. 17.
With a 17, you wake up none the worse, considering that you've spent the entire night out in the bare
I have slept in 2 hours.
Wilderness.
Much more deadly place than this.
and as you quickly pack up your own belongings and rucksack, you are the first to finish, given your lack of, well, tents per se. The rest of you also follow suit quite soon enough, and you can move on to the next hex. Up to you.
I think. I don't know.
Up to you.
We're also following on the road.
But the road passes exactly between them.
Let's move here.
Closer to the first, yeah.
Assuming the same marching order,
Yes.
the slight rainfall which had troubled you the next day becomes worse. The dark clouds up above you become thicker and grayer. The wind picks up, and suddenly you realize that the weather is turning foul, very foul, and you realize that you are heading into the beginnings of a blizzard once more. The wind coming in your direction is chilly and freezing, and the rain intensifies, snowfall starts plummeting onto you, heavy snowfall. And you realize that even to navigate this cart through the road, it is becoming even more difficult by the hour as the snow continues to pile up. Your movement in general slows down, and you realize that around noontime you've only covered half the distance that you would have covered usually. So I will need you at this point actually to do nothing, but I will roll another random encounter to see what happens, because the amount of time we've traveled so far through this hex is going to double because the weather is blizzard weather.
Does it mean it takes us 2 days?
That's right. Yes. So I would say not around noon, though towards the end of the day, once you're about ready to settle down, you realize that you've covered half the distance, which you would have otherwise. What do you do at the end?
We settle down, I think, just as we did the previous night.
Perhaps you can imagine maybe forward is the way to the faster.
You can travel through the night, it's up to you.
But it would put us at a disadvantage. Well, it would put you at a disadvantage because you would be exhausted, no?
Would it be exhausted?
I guess so, because you'd be going the night without rest.
Oh yeah, we did that.
No, you would take constitution check on a train.
Yeah.
I don't think it's one of us did.
And it might be harder since we're in rough weather, so I don't know.
We'll take a night of rest. And assuming now that's Frank, that's sure does that he hasn't done.
Yeah.
Does Frank have...
It has prepare meals, by the way.
Uh-huh.
It has a feature called prepare meals, which you were inclined to use in this.
Does he have any other abilities that can shelter us from the elements?
Well, you tell me, to be honest. I'm not sure what abilities you are specifically referring to.
He said as this prepare meals feature and the two persons.
Oh, you're asking about Frank. Oh, my bad. Let's see. So, I have his character sheet here. So he has... He doesn't have prepare meals. What's the
It's not speech,
okay. I see. Though, what does it do exactly, to be honest? Yes, but how does it differ from consuming a ration, is my question.
The meal is prepared.
Rations are done with lunches.
Prepare meals takes more time. It's a literal disadvantage. Prepare meals, D&D. You can prepare it
It's a chef feat, I think.
You would alright. It buffs your meals, basically.
Yes, sir. What sort of buffs are we talking about?
It makes the rations more
Yeah,
Roll
this
up
one I
to
see.
5 creatures of your choice, you gain 1 extra hit point per hit die spent during a short rest.
Okay.
Provided you have access to your cook's utensils and sufficient food. Okay, so you still need the food and you need the cook's.
Food you have, utensils, I'm checking through his inventory.
It doesn't matter in this case because it's for regaining HP and you're all
Fair enough. But he does have cook's utensils for the future.
Yeah, I don't trust this cooking with the disgusting slimy stuff.
That's the reflect.
I knock on the wagon.
Knock knock.
You're inside, right?
Sorry?
You're inside.
Yeah, I knock from the outside.
Like a dog.
I need to run
Run.
or walk. I can feel my legs.
Well, fine. You can walk. You can run, but your weapons, I think, you should keep inside the wagon.
Okay. I take off unstrap rather my large axe. I put on my glove, secure it, and burst out of the wagon and start running. He tries to run at least. I don't know whether he's successful or not.
As the others are busy rummaging their tents, setting them up, picking at some rations, all of you collectively acknowledge that the dwarf is jogging around further up the road as best as he can. You are buffeted with rain, snow, and cold, freezing winds. And the further you press up, trying to fight against it, you realize that it's going to be a very rough night ahead of you. What do you do?
He's going to be in the wagon.
It's
he's going. Alright. Once he realizes that it's too hard to continue to run forwards, he goes back to the wagon and starts jogging on the spot. He just spends, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes doing that, and he clambers back onto the wagon.
Okay. And as you join back the rest of the party, you settle down for the night. I assume you take the same night watch for this particular night, and using in the same order, starting with Vidas, your first few hours go by uneventful. Your next few hours also go by uneventful. And as you wake up yourself, Jermaine, your hours also go by uneventful. At the last few batch of hours, Drunril, you wake up eager once more to stretch your own limbs, and nothing happens. You wake up the next day once more to the same blizzard affecting you. As you demolish your tents, pack everything back into the camp, you set once more forth further down the road. Before we do, you need to deduct one more ration, and in addition to that, it is a blizzard, so there are some checks that we need to do going forward. I need all of you to make a hypothermia check by doing a constitution saving throw, please.
Would that affect me as well since I'm in the wagon?
It still does, yes. You would have rolled a disadvantage if you were sleeping outside, say if not under a tent or a wagon.
This is a constitution.
Yes.
So that means 821.
So all of you successfully managed to stay warm this night. However, I will also need you to make another constitution saving throw to ward off any frostbite.
But we're not taking the
It's two different things.
We shouldn't have argued.
Okay?
Is it an advantage because I'm sleeping inside the tent?
No. It would have been with disadvantage if you were sleeping outside of a tent. Okay? You wake up to a severe case of frostbite virus. You take 16 points of cold damage. You feel your fingers stiff, unable to move, as if you've been frozen solid this particular night. You realize, actually you've been sleeping outside technically. You have the tent, that's right. You realize that you've left the flap of the tent open this particular night. And you almost froze to death during the night.
Wait, I can't use my head dice to read this, right?
You don't, because you suffer this at the dawn after a night's rest.
You can take a short
Takes a short rest on the way.
climb on the wagon.
I can't.
Yes, but it's a short rest, no?
Yep.
So you can during the day.
I rolled very high rolls against this. It was quite high. Further to that, since you are traveling in a blizzard, I forgot to mention the previous day, you have disadvantage on the perception checks and survival checks that you do during your travel through a blizzard. And any range attacks made within blizzard weather, it is assumed that you are in light cover because of the lack of visibility. Very well. You continue on your third day through this extremely bad weather. As you continue forwards with the same marching order as before, you at some point, Vidas, make your way over into the wagon, swapping with I don't know who else.
Wait, 1 second. I can actually, if I'm taking a short rest, then I use my second wind first. Because that also resets on a short rest. So that's 1d10 plus 3. And I got 6 points of health back. And I start taking my short rest.
Sure. And the hour goes by quite quickly, actually, allowing you to restore some of.
I use 12 my hit dice now. And I get another 6 points.
restoring back some of the warmth that you had lost over the night. You warm yourself back up as best as you can, and you feel warmth creeping back into your frozen fingers. In fact, the weather is so bad that you realize at some point that it makes sense actually to alternate, with some of you resting within the wagon and swapping between one and another as best as you can. At some point, Jermaine, you take your turn inside of the back of the wagon. From outside, you can hear the others struggling against the wind, the oncoming rain, and the howling winds, sending snow and water buffeting in your direction. And you, for a second, find the shelter within the wagon a welcoming respite. As you lay there, recovering a bit from the harsh elements outside, you already feel yourself missing Termalaine. To some extent. Because ever since you've left Termalaine, you've felt this sense of burden, of anxiousness settling upon your own self, diminishing the further you leave the town behind you. As you've already felt it in subsequent days, there has been an odd sense of familiarity within the surroundings of Termalaine, as if you've been subjected to some sense of déjà vu as you've navigated through the snowy corridors of Termalaine. It is as if, to some extent, the town was quite familiar to you, even though you've never set a foot inside of it. And this feeling also harkened back to the circular diagram you found etched within the Blue Clam Inn in the floor above. The circular maze of sorts, which you had transcribed onto a piece of paper, if you remember. Now subconsciously, not just today, but even over the last few nights or so on your way here, occasionally you do flick the piece of paper open, casting a glance at it or two, trying to remember where you've seen it before, but all the time that you try and do this, you come up short with no answer. The odd thing is that in your attempts to resketch it, to put it more in a better fashion rather than just scribed very roughly, to try and sketch it onto a new piece of paper, you've realized that you've grown accustomed to the pattern already. It is as if you know what to draw, or after the first two attempts, you've gotten surprisingly much better at drawing the same circular pattern, like maze. It looks like, yes, your hand is accustomed to the drawing of this maze. And after like your fourth and fifth attempt, you are almost at a point. Can you show it under the? You are almost at a point where you have started to sketch this almost by heart. You don't know why, but just the knowledge of you being able to do such a feat is worrying to you, because you are unable to explain why. You are a mercenary. Your background is in mercenary work. It's not like you have a scholarly mind specifically and you're attuned to this type of work. And again, you find yourself asking, what the heck are you drawing? And why does it look so familiar to you?
During my short time on the wagon, as I mulled this over, so subconsciously I start trying to solve the maze. To see if it's even solvable, or maybe as I'm solving it I might remember something from the pattern of the solution or something like that. Yeah, so that's basically how I spend my time on the back of the wagon.
And this is an exercise you've attempted not just today, but also ever since you've come across it. And slowly, over time, you realize that the save is indeed solvable. It is not impossible. But again, you're not sure exactly what all of this means and where it's leading to. Of course, Yes, there is a pathway from the edge of the perimeter to the center of the maze. But to what end? Sure, you have found the center, but what lies within the center? Why are you even asking these questions in the first place? Why is this maze so intriguing to you? And all of you collectively reach you reach the end of this particular day. The weather itself starts calming down a bit, and you settle for the night. You haven't moved yet. You've settled down for the third night because it was a blizzard.
Okay.
What do you do?
I try to remember to close my pen. What is I take a shot at me. No, it's okay. I can make something.
Fair enough.
No. Make sure I'm well covered for the night. And I actually light a fire. Not inside, just outside.
So the worst parts of the blizzard have subsided. You still feel the aftermath of the blizzard still about. The snow in front of you is still packed up tightly. The weather is still frigidly cold, and there are still remnants of snow still falling down. To that end, as you once more pitch your tents for the third night, Vidus tries his best to pitch a fire in the middle of the road. I need to make a survival check for us to see whether you manage. And remember, since it was blizzard conditions, you have to roll this with disadvantage.
Of course I have to. I roll. Vidus. Where is my Vidus? Vidus is here. He rolls a 9.
With the 9, unfortunately, you do not succeed in lighting the
Can
fire.
I get some advantage with some help on this particular roll of lighting a fire?
I will help you.
What are you doing? How big?
Don't give it much.
Right, there is a lot of fun.
I see a fight is struggling with the fire. And I think maybe he needs some help. And I approach him and say,
Last night I suffered almost some frostbite. My fingers are numb. I need to warm my frigid cold hands.
"You underestimated the weather."
Yes. Although this blizzard is calming down, I still feel the tremble, or I don't tremble in my
I don't feel it.
I got stuck. I'm trembling.
So can I, perhaps you might try, I will light a fire and I help you.
I light the fire for Vidus.
Very well. Give us a survival check, please, with disadvantage.
Can I use help him to counteract the disadvantage?
You could have rolled both of you without disadvantage, but since you've already rolled, Jermaine successfully manages to continue on your ditch efforts to light a fire, and building on his work, it successfully manages to catch fire.
Thank you, my friend. I warm my cold rigid hands to retain my friend.
I remember these wounds from my brothers in arms when I was with the Neverwinter Patrol. They're grievous wounds. You should tend to them very carefully.
Wait, you were in the patrol, but never went there.
Yes, of course. For my mercenary.
How come we have never met them before? I try to think back, seeing that I have already done some.
Served as well.
Yes, a mercenary of the Neverwinter Academy, a bit less than a year now, I believe.
Perhaps we were serving at different times.
Most probably. Can I try to take a history check to see if I remember?
Go ahead.
Can I also make history check to see if I
I get a lovely 7.
Oh, I get a lovely 8. Yeah, that's 6 actually. Lovely 5 actually.
So, both of your memories are a bit fuddled from your previous past service. You meet so much people, you met so much people on your previous jobs that it would be very hard to remember any random face, to be honest, and carry that memory along with you all this time.
Perhaps, yes, I might have served at different times then.
We must have met many people during our careers. Faces are forgotten easily, especially behind armor and helmets.
You can say that again, friend.
And yep.
And I just want to say, just warm my hands, and once they're suitably warm. I still need the fire, but I step inside my tent and purposely remember to close it tight.
Of course. That said, given that the blizzard, the aftermath of the blizzard is still around, though the blizzard is still diminishing, the weather around you is still quite harsh. I will need all of you once more to collectively give me another Constitution saving throw, this time with advantage, given that you've lit a fire. This is for hypothermia checks. Okay. Constitution saving throw.
Actually 11. 10, sorry, 10.
The two of you wake up the next morning with a level of exhaustion. Both of you. Further to that, I need you also once more to make another round of Constitution saving throws, once more with advantage. Okay. You will swap out your hit dice. You round, I believe, up. Go for round up. And all of you manages to successfully ward off any frostbite. In hindsight, thinking that the lighting the fire was actually a nifty idea there to help you with all of this.
Yes, fire during the cold.
You wake up the next day to a level of snow which has diminished, visibility being much better than it was the day before, and pretty much the sun has set out completely for the first time in the last 3 days.
Again, in the morning, very steam. Everyone has woken up while there's nothing in the camp. Jerusalem goes further. It's difficult to go further. You're out there, just goes.
You warm yourself up as best as you can, knowing fully well that the best form of warm-up out here in the wilderness is some good solid exercise. As steam comes out of your mouth from the harsh cold weather outside, you manage to jog a good 10 to 15 minutes up and down the road, warming yourself up. And as you come back, already kind of stretching your limbs and cooling down, you see that all of the others are still groggily getting up, wrapping themselves as best as they can from the harsh cold weather that is, whilst you are pretty much almost bare bones after your warm-up.
Anything I can do to help? No, I can do again.
Shall we move on forward? Perhaps you might meet these goblins once.
So that is another ration piece deducted from all of you, so that's so far -3. Good boy, bravo! Perfect!
Regain inspiration from expanding the business, helping the business of known writers.
No, that you know of at least. Maybe, who knows, next time you go back you'll find some sort of multi-million-dollar business which has set out in your wake. The next day goes by uneventful, and you feel that you are making some ground actually for the first time the last couple of days. As the snow clears up, it is much less extreme now to navigate the beast of burden through Bremen's run. Morning goes into noon and slowly through the afternoon as duskfall comes around once more. You successfully and uneventfully traverse this day's worth of journey. As nighttime comes around, what do you do? You settle down once more. You light a fire. I would need you to make another survival check for us. Fair enough, so you can roll with advantage.
Not now.
You successfully light a fire for all of you. Though you feel that even given your turns, like lighting the fire is at this point just a commodity. And that the fire was really like a life or death situation back during the blizzard. That said though, again, it is still like a comforting aspect to have, and as the night dwindles by, each one of you taking your own individual night's watch.
Can I doff my arrows when I sleep so that I can get your advice?
That is a good question. By the way, about the hit dice. You did not specify that you were doffing off armor, given that the first time you... Yes. Whereas in your case, you can indeed do so, yes.
Can I turn that off when I'm sleeping? I have the chain on. Chain.
You doff it obviously quite quickly, given the relative amount of time which you're going through. And taking the first watch by this, you spend the next couple of hours covering yourself as best as you can, whilst like keeping it. You're staying with the armor. Okay, fair enough. Good point. You spend the first couple of hours standing watch. Nothing happens. Graven, you take the next round standing watch. Nothing happens. Germain, you take the third watch and nothing happens. And following it up, you take the fourth watch and also nothing happens. The next day comes by. Sorry? That's right, yes. It's a new square, a new ration which you've consumed. No, the weather was decent. Unless you want to. You wake up the next day to an intense amount of rainfall. The bad weather seems to have come back with some manner of vengeance. And where you were met with sunlight drizzle during the first day outside of Termalaine, now it is double that. You trudge through, pack your belongings hastily, dumping everything into the cart as best as you can, and with whatever manner of waterproof equipment or garments that you have, you trudge forward further up through Bremen's run. As best as you can, yes. Seeing as you're not moving or walking and spending the rest of your day within the cart, you are leaving your water skin exposed as best as you can. And you manage to refill it. Though in hindsight, even just collectively, you do know that water is not that big of an issue out here, given that you are surrounded with ample amount of snow. The morning shifts towards noon, and the rain does not relent. You continue your travel during the afternoon. And towards nightfall, the rain is still ongoing. The sun sets earlier than usual, given the dark clouds up above you. So what do you do as you near towards the end of the day? That's right, it's still the same amount of distance. That's right. Did you deduct a piece of ration for today? So what do you do?
We try to attract goblins, but they haven't. How long are you willing to travel before we can?
How long? The shelter. The wall don't shelter.
maybe we can just stop that action instead because now I think it is the actual discussion.
It's very good. Speaking. I 6 more days. I think that how long does it take us? Will it take us to get to the shelter? I don't believe you can head back now.
Might as well see what Onug is doing.
Seems like a nice thing.
Perhaps he's
Unless he's not.
I'm going to say I will step more towards the wood and see if I can find something that from playing there.
Very well.
I guess they do weapon.
Yes, but Frank is managing the youth.
Can you take us further towards the
Oh, of course I can! And he navigates the donkey off the road and more a few feet away from the main road. You're still obviously still not in the forest per se, you're just a few feet away from the road, but still he's led you further into the forest as best as he can. You're still remaining within line of sight of the road itself. You stop there for the night. Unpacking your belongings, you pitch what? 2 tents once more. Give me a survival check for the fire, please. Are you helping him? Advantage. Very well. And the two of you working together to collect timberwood, you pile it up in the middle where you've established your own tents and the wagon, and you light up a fire. You will resume your original watch as before, so starting with you, Vidas. All of you collectively have gone to sleep as usual, and
we can make another night.
Wow. You take?
give me your passive perception. After the first hour of the night, more or less, you hear twigs shaking in the distance. Something cracking, rather.
I'm going, thanks.
You were the first one taking the watch.
Can I try outside? Peer outside my tent? I'm assuming actually I'm outside my tent. Towards the direction where the group is not.
You open the tent, popping your head outside to see what there is. Make a perception check with disadvantage. 7. There seems to be nothing there.
Which is the closest? Wait, I didn't see where it was on one side, inside the tent.
It is up to you.
I assume no.
I think exactly. So you're flipping along.
I go outside slowly towards the first north end, which is next to me. Or actually, without moving. I cast Mage Hand, which is invisible. And I tap them up from the assuming I see him.
You don't see him because the wagon, the way it is parked, is kind of the side of it is facing you, and even then it's dark. You can't make out the dwarf.
The next step out is
You get out feeling, yes, of course. So first, give me a stealth check. You're trying to do it intently, and you also feel like a shiver of cold, knowing that your armor is inside of the tent, and you just have your slight like pieces of leather and garments. I thought you said you weren't, because you were recovering fiddlers before. Yes, I know, but you didn't tell me that you were going to start through wearing it.
sword, and there is no sword.
If you said that, then that's fine. So you have your armor around you. Even that said, though, it's still quite cold. As you do stealthily sneak out of the tent, tell us what you get.
I get 80 minus a little.
Your feet trudge through the damp snow beneath your feet, and slowly you make your way towards the nearest tent. The fire, which you lit earlier, already starting to calm down a bit. What do you do?
I tell them.
They try to knock them. While still looking to see if I see anyone.
I'm here.
Snow, wind.
No snow.
Whips. Snapping.
It's a good thing.
I shake
I move towards the wagon
And I wake up.
I turn the
You don't hear.
You don't hear it at first, but then you feel rough hands shaking you.
You are a dwarf.
Sit up.
You sit up.
You can see Vitus in front of you, as well as Jermaine peering from outside his own tent, still half asleep, groggily staring at you.
Brother scans the surroundings with windows, but still keeps the cold because he doesn't want to release his presence. He kind of puts his head up just over the kind of edge of the window, right? He starts peeing like a sauna.
So
I need you to, first of all, give me a stealth check with advantage, and a perception check with, well, just normal perception check.
So stealth would be
And your perception check?
with advantage.
With advantage.
Sorry?
Just a normal check.
So that would be a 8.
Tonight you peer out to the darkness, your keen dwarfen eyes trying to make out if there is anything outside. It is pitch black except for the last few remnants of the glowing fire which you set up earlier.
Go back to sleep. Seeing that thing, and I look.
I'm neither
of the other, so anything.
I go back to my
I go back to my
This is
Before you go back to
before you
sleep.
go back to sleep. It helps.
I know that you
I
want
know that you want to see that when
I will keep a lookout.
keep a lookout.
Okay.
Okay.
I will.
I will make a statement if I do.
Not exactly in my eyes, they're just doing it.
Okay.
So
As Vitus, you head back into your own tent and snuggle away as best as you can. After the first hour, you wake up craven. Right? That's still the same routine you have? The first 2-3 hours roughly.
I wait for about 30 or 30 minutes to an hour, just scanning the surroundings and then I'm gonna sleep.
Before you head back to sleep, you curse the alienish like Githyanki or whoever or whatever he is who forced you out of your slumber so early. Over what? A rabbit. Craven. What do you do?
Is the fire still burning?
The fire is dimly lit now. It is almost at its end.
I'm looking for some nearby branches or twigs and try to revive it.
And quite easily you manage to revitalize it. And it does give a bit more light and needed warmth, especially after Germain had woken you there for a second, claiming that Vidas had seen or heard something. Anyway, you sit back, resting your back against the porch of the tent as best as you can, pretty much gazing quite intently towards the direction of the forest, just in case. Do you do anything else?
No.
After the first hour goes by, you realize that you've been standing guard for nothing because nothing happens. And after that first hour, another hour goes by and you eventually rouse Germain from his slumber and you go back to sleep.
I go through the procedure of hiding my weapons and standing watch. I also make sure that the fire is still burning.
Putting your weaponry back into the snow, you sit by the fire. The next 2 hours go by quite silently.
I pick up my weapons and wake up.
You wake up from the cards. Do you do anything special?
I scan the setup.
Okay, make another perception check. You're looking out, you see nothing but the tents, once more the fire abating a bit, a small child walking on the perimeter of the forest, just trees moving about. A small child, what's that? What do you see?
Dangerousness. Do I see a small? What color is the child's skin?
You can't make out any color. It is as if you've seen something running or walking like a small silhouette-like figure.
I was checking to see whether it's green or not. Because I cannot reveal his presence now, especially since it seems to be an important time. If it was a goblin, he needs to remain there. So he keeps on looking towards the direction where that I won't say child, but towards where the small mini being was running.
You walk towards it.
No, I'm not outside.
You're just staring at the location.
So I myself in the wagon and I keep on looking, staring into the wall.
You hear a twig breaking from the side of the road this time.
No. I turn my head to look towards it. Hear this? Yes. I prepare my head. And I wait up. I cover it. Spot. We are
Okay. You see him shuffling about in his own bag. What do you know? The frog is adjacent to you. His hands holding a broom.
And actually what I do is I take out a tankard of it and pop it off. Drink and then put the tankard back in my bag.
So what are you doing? You just
and tracking the figures.
the minute goes by. The thing is, at the back, you can see what there is as well. Yeah. And you try and stare intently, specifically around the periphery of the encampment you've set up, as well as towards the direction where you thought you've heard the noise. You see a semi-humanoid figure, about half the size of a human, wearing tattered clothes and leather pelts. a spear in hand. And where it would have its face, you see what looks to be like a dragonish, like small skull, where the head would be. It is horned, and it has small miniature teeth on the underside. And it looks like to be bearing a small shield and a spear, and it's looking intently towards the tents. It thinks, whatever it is, that it's not visible, but you see it from your own direction. And Frank, who is next to you, what are you looking at? You here? You think they're goblins? To wake the others. I can. The two of you. You feel somebody moving your shoulders, rousing you. But you see nothing. Make a perception check with disadvantage. Craig? Six. So you are unable to make out anything, unfortunately. It's dark, you're still groggy. You're not even sure why you're awake, given that you were spending the watch already. You, however, hear. Tell them out to come now! Now! What do you mean now? They can't. They aren't ready yet. Just when we can move. Now!
I turn to say.
You look towards the direction with your passive perception collectively of the wagon, and you do see, peering from behind the wagon window, an intent dwarf with a cape surrounding him and an axe by his side, staring wickedly out into the darkness. Adjacent to him is also Frank, who waves at you.
I look at this one. Seeing that I see it's close. I touch the mage hand, open it slowly, and shake them.
You're also aroused, and as you turn around, you see a spectral hand floating there above you, and points the direction of their tent. You do see that both their heads are popping out, specifically his gloved hand in your direction, and as he moves away, the spectral hand dissipates. What do you do? So, perception checks with disadvantage, both. Actually, you've already rolled, to be honest. You don't see anything. What do you do?
I don't know, given that we heard before, and now that they're waking him, we have something that they might have heard. So we just by this stage and decided to descend and peers out, maybe spot anything but the dark.
Jemmy, you see two figures coming up by the now kind of died down campfire. Both of them are bearing clubs, wooden clubs, as well as a faded reddish sort of haversack over their shoulders. Their heads are bare and they bear two small pointed green ears, as well as a pointed crooked nose. The goblins seem to be looking around, warily, specifically pointing at the wagon. And you realize that they are inching ever so closely forward.
I cast my join.
Okay.
I wait to see what Drunrin will do with his comments.
You hear muttering coming from inside the tent. And you see a spectral shield for a second glimmer around Craven, who is at the ready, at moment's notice, to pounce forth. You also see these two figures inching by the campfire.
Do I realize that the dwarves is like
They are slowly moving in your direction.
I prepare the reaction that the stone as one of the open actually can I do the following once I realize that they're in front of the tent, I take a swing. Put it back, that's a rage, and once they open the wagon door, I try to look one of them.
One of them moves further upwards, the other one staying back, keeping guard, but the other one comes forth with the club in hand and the sack in his other hand. You hear the creature's feet pressing, crunching against the snow, and you feel it now that it's behind the wagon, exactly just opposite the door, which is basically closing just in front of the door.
Prepare as soon as the door opens. If the door doesn't open, and in the next 6 seconds I'll open it myself.
It'll be an action when Drunrin pops out of the wagon. I'll attack the goblin that's serving him.
Can I see the goblins on the
At this point, you start making out exactly what is happening here, and you realize that you're not alone.
I see them also.
Yes.
So I wait until
until the wagon.
So you wait till the wagon is open, and what do you do?
I see something close, then I'll cast sword.
End spell? I think you need to be specific, chill touch. You hear the lock of the wagon door being fumbled about.
Exile.
Roll for initiative. You. Can you put the dwarf? But you came out of the back, I assume.
Okay, so that would be a...
It's the dwarves, lads! The goblins! The dwarves, the goblins! Yes, the guys!
One more comes out.
It's the dwarves!
9.
Okay. What's that? And the goblin is immediately pushed back as you, the dwarf, pounds into the snow, axe in hand, already bathed in blood. Who's next? Who else had a reaction? All of you, basically. What do you do?
My reaction, for my reaction, I got one, but I had a reaction for...
These are reactions, so we will do them first before. Yeah.
So my reaction was to get out of the tent and charge the struggling.
Alright.
So 1, 2, 3, and I attack. 18 plus something, I think.
Hits.
That's some. And that's... 8 plus. 5 damage.
You dart outside of the camp, rushing, almost straggling into the snow, leaving Craven behind you, uttering some sort of war cry, which you are not sure even how to discern, you bring your sword slashing down against the small green-like goblin. The goblin squeals out in panic and more in fright rather than him being hurt as he sees this monolithic human charging him. Who's next? Me no speak English, no speak.
When I cast Tabletop. And it begins. 20.
Dirty 20, okay.
And it takes 3 necrotic damage.
This is the same guy with Jermaine charged. So, you also charge in parallel to Craven as you dart towards the fire pit, which some sort of part of you thinks is the safest place here within the camp. You outstretch your hand towards the goblin, and with your palm there you cast the necrotic energies of Chill Touch upon him, and you see the creature being berated by necrotic slashes. And the part of his arm freezes for a second, the Chill Touch. What are you? Who's next?
Sorry, after Craven, that would be...
Sorry, the next reaction will be yours, because you also wanted to react. And there's also Frank.
So Frank will be first.
These are reactions, because we even haven't even entered the initiative
I
rounds.
move towards the nearest goblin, who I guess is next to the campfire. And I strike with my sword. I get a lovely 10.
So, you charge the goblin, who is now faced with the dwarven axe-wielding warrior. However, he hears you charging it. The goblin turns around you to face you, and it ducks underneath your first swipe.
Too little.
Get off me! So, it is Frank's turn. Frank will also emerge from the wagon just after Dranril, and he will attempt a mind sliver onto the same goblin. The goblin, however, squeals up, "Get out of my head!" as there is an axe and a sword being wielded against him. And successfully blocks damage. So, actually now we enter initiative order.
So that will be goblin, non-goblin. Frank.
So, Frank will go again. Frank will attempt to do another mind sliver onto the same goblin. The goblin fails it, and he takes 2 points of psychic damage.
And he has like a disadvantage or something.
He has, I think, a minus d4 for attack, saving throws, and any sort of ability checks. Who's next?
So after that would be Vitus.
I come again at him with my sword, determined to slice him open. And I get a 15.
15 hits.
15 hits. And I do... So 7 points of slashing damage.
With several points of slashing damage, you continue to corner the cowering goblin. You bring your blade down, which he manages to block with his club. However, the blade cuts through the wooden piece of club, shattering the weapon. Panting for dear life, he is about to turn around. However, you bring your sword down for a second strike, and you fell the goblin spilling its blood into the snow, killing it. Can you reach it?
And 7, sorry, 5.
With that, I go to throw like
8
8.
damage, sorry. 1 damage.
Okay, and you dealt 3, so that's total level 11. Okay.
And seeing that I look around for the next goblin, I go to meet him head on and I head towards.
Alright. After Vitus, who is next?
I cast Choose Touch again on the goblin. 24.
24 hits.
6 points of damage.
So, Seeing that the first chill touch that you attempted had somewhat of a limited effect on the goblin, this time around you put all of your effort into it. You focus on the exact incantation, and you mock curl your fingers around the goblin's neck. And you, Jermaine, as you're about to also fell the goblin with your own strike, see somehow like a skeleton ghostly hand wrap around the goblin's neck and tighten around it. And as the goblin falls to his knees, screeching, howling, but yet at the same time struggling for air, the hand vanishes, leaving only what seems to be like pieces of black stripes where the fingers were wrapped around the skin. Obviously, its skin having been scorched. Not scorched, but actually frozen almost to a blackish extent. The goblin's dead. What else do you do, Craven?
And I don't see anything.
From where you are at? No.
I look around.
Cool. So as you do walk up towards that wall, since you are technically not in the road and you are peering around, I'll let you do that as a free action. You do see that there are two goblins lined up over here with bows coming at you. There is another goblin here with a mace who is inching up the road, as well as another sack-wielding goblin about to come from that direction.
There are more coming from the road.
Okay. Craven rushes back towards the heart of the camp. What else? Who's next?
So the lions top destroys.
Very well. That is difficult terrain.
So he does not there.
Actually, no. That is not difficult terrain. The rocks are impassable, but yet you can't scale them. It will, however, take an action for you to scale it.
And he
They're technically impossible, yes.
okay, so he rushes to that eye.
So he does not.
Here. And seeing that
The rocks are impossible.
the goblins too far away to reach for the
It will,
moment,
however, take
he leaves for a jump and goes in.
You use your reaction to unsheath the javelin and adjacent to the axe you have wielding in your hand. Roll an attack roll.
And
Okay, that gives you advantage.
so judgment B, strength.
Yes.
From that, so that would be
23 hits.
and judgment.
It's a d6 piercing.
3 damage.
3 damage. You let loose the javelin, and it finds purchase into the goblin's right foot, embedding itself almost through the entirety of its shin, and the end of the javelin, spattered with goblin blood, actually pierces itself into the snowy ground, to some extent pinning the goblin. You realize that it will be unable to move as freely as it used to before. What else do you do?
Right foot, embedding itself almost through the entirety of its shin. And
You laugh out a dwarven, hearty, almost sort of battle cry, knowing that it is about a matter of giving morale to your army, to your party, as well as demoralizing your enemies. That's right. Who's next?
So we have
What do you do?
the almost sort of battle.
Is this wall difficult terrain or difficult terrain?
So the hedges are difficult terrain.
Your army.
The wall, you will need a bonus action or an action to scale on. That's it really.
So I walk to the other side. Is this was difficult terrain or difficult scale?
So the hedges are
It is also, by the way, heavy cover. Like the hedge is light cover, whereas the wall is heavy cover.
Is this on the other hedge?
Good question. It's actually over here like this, so it will be hedged.
So I stop it.
Okay.
And that's actually.
It is also by the way heavy cover. Like the hedge is light cover, whereas the wall is heavy cover.
I'll try to. Okay, yeah, I understand. I can wait for this.
Alright. You crouch behind the wall as best as you can, knowing that there are goblins thanks to Craven's war cry and alert. And you do also confirm that there are actually goblins moving past you. Because you jump the gap over there, you see 3 of them aiming their weapons at you, one of which is also coming into your encampment. So, as you dart up behind the wall, crouching behind it, you shelter, hearing the rustle of goblins on the other side of the wall. Who's next?
You do also confirm that there are
Goblins.
jump the gap over there, you see 3 of them aiming their weapons.
This goblin moves through the hedge over here, bursts through it, and prepares to land a mace onto your own head. What's your AC?
AC is 18.
You take 6 points of bludgeoning damage as the mace is brought onto your shoulder.
This goblin moves through the hedge.
You thought for a second that you had gone unnoticed, but the goblin shows you otherwise. These two will trudge over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in full sight of Raven then. Goblins also have dark vision, so they are unimpeded when they try to launch a short bow shot against him. Raven, what is your AC? It does not hit. The arrow flies past you. The second goblin will try and do the same against you. And from his direction, you will have cover. AC? 15. It does not hit. It hits the wall instead. This goblin right here will 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dashes towards you and ends its turn there. The goblin down there will try and fight against you. It does not hit you, however. With its foot impaled into the snow with a loose javelin over there, it is in dire pain. The goblin down there will try and fight against you. It does not hit you, however. With its foot impaled into the snow with a loose javelin over there, it is in dire pain. More goblins emerge from the gloom of the wood. Who's next?
So,
Frank will attempt to do. Why not? Mind Sliver again onto the goblin who has charged you. The goblin succeeds and he does not take damage. Who's next?
I lay down my sword with the goblin as we know the Okay.
11 does not hit. The goblin somehow manages to bring its shield up in time to block your deadly attack. Who is next?
I lay down my sword on the goblin.
Okay. The goblin raises its mace up in the air about to hit you. However, you realize it slips in the snow and it falls prone to the ground as it does so. It's not a natural one. Unfortunately, yes, I'm sorry. I was not going to block you like that.
However,
Okay, you are taking the camp, right? Okay, so 19 hits. With chill touch once more and ready, you manifest it against the same target which Jermaine is facing. And Jermaine there for a second gives you a glance of, first of all, thanks, but at the same time like, bro, really want to take my kill again for the second time? Who is next?
When chill touch once more and ready, you manifest it against the same target which Jermaine is facing. Jermaine there for Get them! At the same time, like, bro. Again, for this
My axe down to the
Go ahead. Hits.
dwarves in our midst! Get them!
How much? No damage. Oh, nice. With your axe gleaming almost maniacally, you bring it down. The axe cuts through whatever leather strappings this goblin has, along by slicing through its shield arm completely, decapitating it from its arm. It is still somehow still alive, armless, with just single spear in hand and just takes bloody stump in the other. And it is more fearful of this maniac-like monster facing it rather than the fact that its arm is strewn on the ground a feet away from it. Who's next?
It is somehow still alive, armless, with just single spear in hand and just takes bloody stump. And it is more fearful of this maniac-like monster rather than the fact that its arm is strewn on the ground a feet away from it.
16 hits.
Okay, I'm going to use precision attack. And damage. Okay. So 2 plus strength plus 3, so plus 5.
Dawar lejn għitnikas kortiku minn id-direzzjoni biex tiku perspettiva differenti.
7 damage on the goblin.
7 damage on the goblin. That is the same goblin which was chill touched. You slash your blade against it. It brings its morning star up to deflect your blade. Second attempt, you try to bring your blade now from a different angle and blocks it with its shield. These goblins are fucking dead. The third strike, you bring it down and this time you graze it through its stomach. And it takes a couple of steps back in fear of you. Who's next?
It brings its morning star up to deflect your blade. The second attempt,
Goblin's turn. The Goblin's turn.
the third strike, this time you graze it through its stomach.
So one of the goblin rangers here will take a shot at you, Craven, and the other will fire against the front. So, throw a total of 13? 15. The arrow comes flying towards you. Your mage armor deflected. The shield is knocked off with the ward. The second goblin fires and hits Frank. Frank will take 4 points of piercing damage.
The arrow comes flying towards you. Your main armor deflects.
Alright, that's those turn. The goblin in front of you, Jermaine, will try to strike back. Jermaine, you take 3 points of bludgeoning damage against you. As it manages to bring down its morning star onto your foot, crushing your toes.
It adds to my rolling damage, so once used that will be
Okay.
just 6 damage. So
3 points of bludgeoning damage. So it takes less damage.
it takes 6 instead of 7.
It manages to bring down
Okay.
this morning star onto your foot, crushing your toes.
The goblin in front of you will try and fight back. It's a single limb and is going to do so with advantage given that you've recklessly attacked. It crits. With a single arm, it crits. It deals a lot of damage, it deals 11 points of piercing damage. That's right. Okay. The goblin's from this angle over here. So
it crits. With a single arm, it crits. Deals a lot of damage, it deals 11 points of piercing damage.
can you figure it out? The goblin who is adjacent to you will use its disengage action. I know, but they have double escape, so they can take a disengage action as a bonus action. And it will move 6 squares in that direction, if you can please, away from the two of you, towards me now. So, this direction here. Meanwhile, if you will, can you move those two goblins almost a dash? Actually, let's start. One of them will dash towards the two of them.
Towards me now.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's good. The other two will. Actually, the other one will also be the same. The other one will go dash towards front.
A dash. Let's
So this guy will want to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 dash all the way here.
The other two will.
And this guy will get up half his movement and will walk 1, 2, 3, but I won't make it, so instead I will 1, 2, 3 and move here.
This guy will want to.
That one, Eva. Mela dak ħajprova jimira fuq Vidas. Wara rock please in cover. Eżatt. Tajb, mela, the goblin against you. AC. No, does not hit you. Alright.
Goblin. So basically I make an attack and I have my spirit blade.
Mela dak ħajprova jimira fuq Vidas.
8.
Wara rock please in cover.
To hit. It doesn't hit. And the goblin with the bow shot over there will try to make a shot against Vidas. Now, Vidas, you are technically in cover there, so it's not going to be hella hard to hit you. Actually, now that I think about it, let me move that goblin instead over here behind this tree trunk, and he will try and take a shot against Jamin.
And the goblin with the bow shot over there will try to make a shot against Vidas.
So you take 11 points of piercing damage.
I use my
reaction. That goblin instead over here behind this tree trunk.
reaction to generate that protective field around Jolene and block the shot.
Now the question is, do you see him?
So you take.
It doesn't specify vision. Okay.
And then
You're
it
good.
says whenever you can see with a third, but I can't see him. I mean, it's dark. But
And what does it do?
I rolled the die and I reduced generate.
Go ahead.
7 points.
You Vidas hear Jamin's yell for someone to help him, because for a second there you are panicked. You are getting flanked by all sides from goblins and you are being driven up a wall, literally. As you hear that Vidas, you glance in his direction, and as you see an arrow being pointed towards him, you mentally manage to deflect the arrow and just bend it enough so that instead of being hit a fatal shot, it just grazes you.
You are panicked. You are getting flanked.
Who's next?
You are being driven up.
That's it.
No.
As you hear that Jamin, Vidas, glance in his direction, and as you see an arrow being pointed towards him, you mentally.
Enough time. Jow jien ma nafx nilabu ma m'għandux men spells like offensive of higher level. Le, għandi answer f'ħadar, ma dik tkun moħlija fuq goblin wieħed hemm, so honestly għandi mind sliver nerġa'.
I mean, if he's still coming out.
So the goblin there takes 1 point of psychic damage. Who's next?
Are wet because of the smoke. And I strike the first one with the council of thunder.
Is there a lot of points here on the board?
Yes, actually.
So maybe put them on the second mode instead. They are, well, maybe give them a rest for now.
The trees are wet because of the
Can I see the
He has that, so if it's something useful, let us know. My hand is
Not very good. An 11.
An 11th of hit against the goblin which comes screaming behind you. Not screaming. you hear its worn out battle cry. And having just thwarted the arrow shot against Jermaine, you use your ears to navigate this track precisely without even looking at it. And as it comes charging, you bring out your blade. And you just miss it for a few inches, feeling the blade passing just a few inches away from its neck. Who's next? Or do you do anything else?
Having just thwarted the arrow shot against Jermaine, your ears
He is.
navigate this track precisely without even looking at it. And
The trees, if you walk through them, are difficult. FYI.
just sit for a few minutes. No.
So you see this one-armed goblin leaving a trail of blood in its wake, rushing and trying to vanish through the tree line. You try to incant the spell, Chill Touch once more, and the arm flies towards the goblin over there. However, it falls short, losing blood. It falls to the ground. You miss, you don't hit it, and it's now slowly crawling its way away from you.
It's still alive.
It's still alive.
Oh my god!
Who's next?
By the way, Frank you telepathically and use their cast touch positive brew as a spell, but it will announce their hand.
Did you look up what it does?
Falling its way away from you.
But, meanwhile,
my god!
By the way, Frank
No, I
responds telepathically.
Stream a line of acid 30.5 feet wide. They must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or recover in acid for the spell's duration.
and damages.
Or until they will go. And this is the more.
Alright. 15 hits.
Okay, I found whatever when AOE.
That's right, yeah. I didn't use it there though, it's just one good.
No, you use it this is a good service.
Or recover for the
Specified one was a facility, okay?
Yeah.
or
That's one
Alright. 15 hits.
Damage. Well, okay. Who's next?
I think it was planned, but the problem is we couldn't catch up. I have no electricity.
We are so on our way.
3 hits, 2 hits. I have not. So I wanted to try to.
We are so on our way.
3 hits.
Don't pounce that much on the table because it will send everything shaking. How much? 7 total. Unfortunately not. The goblin manages to block your swipe with his shield. Pesky human! With our arms! We will suffer the worst!
Can I lay on my arms?
It's your turn.
I lay on my arms.
Okay, as a free action, you're throwing the weapons to the ground.
And I surrender to those.
Since it is your turn, give me a, well, as the same free action, a persuasion check since you threw away your weapons.
I lay on my arms.
Reaction.
And I surrender to those. Come on.
Close it. Throw the third one. Who is next? Okay. So the wounded guy seems to take charge here, and he has. I think the weapons is Then the other goblin with the spear kind of pokes you just slightly. He says, "You, up the wall, this side, home."
Take charge.
It is something a sheep in there.
Yes. I think the weapons is keep your eyes
So the goblin there will use its reaction on its turn to either move behind you if you comply, or basically attack you in case you want. The weapons meanwhile are picked up by the wounded goblin, he stashes them away, and the third one will actually break off now. One, two, stash.
Or basically attack you.
What do I do here?
The weapons meanwhile are picked up by the goblin.
So this guy here will dash, because he cannot pass through here, all the way over here. That goblin up there will vanish into the tree line of the board. Well, he got up, he moved the remainder of his 15, and he then dashed. So you only have -1 javelin now.
That goblin up there. Tree line of the board.
At the same time, in his stead, 2 more goblins emerge. So one from over here and one from behind the other tree line, if you will. That's right. No, that's right for the goblin, not for the person. That's right. These guys will barge into the camp, making Jermaine. Speaking of the mule, that guy will try and fire against you, but I will not give you cover here. Because if he hits the mule, it is the same, so what is your AC? 19. It doesn't hit you, however, it still beats the AC of the donkey, and the shaft goes through the donkey.
No! I'm running!
The donkey takes 8 points of damage.
But I will not give the cover here. Because so what is your AC?
We're going to jump answer.
The other goblin will actually try and fire against Frank. Doesn't hit Frank. Instead, it actually manages to harm itself. The bow string breaks and there is 6 points of damage. It has a spare one. And this goblin over here will try and fire a shot against you, Raven. But you are recovered there, so it's actually going to be a hard one. What's your AC? So I'll give you hard cover for the 10. However, it will actually roll 18 plus modifiers. So it does actually hit you. You take 6 points of piercing damage. Those 2 goblins just emerge, so they don't do anything. There is a goblin against Frank. First one swipes, doesn't hit. And then there are 2 goblins there, one against Germain. Sorry, why this? 19. This one manages to hits you in the head with its Morning Star. And you take 5 points of bludgeoning. 1 against you. Swipes against you. The mace makes purchase against your head, but at the last second, you grab its glove with your meaty fist and stir it intently as you push it, overwhelming it with your strength. Doesn't hit you. Okay, that is the goblin's turn. Who's next? Frank needs to do something here, because you guys are in the ship.
Swipes against you. The mace makes purchase against your head, but at the last second,
He
you grab its
can't
glove
because he has to spend an action climbing over the piece of rock there. There is a piece of rock there. The bonus action is for the walls. The rock specifically, I said action at the beginning. But for caustic spray, it needs to be a line, linear.
He can't because he has an action climbing over the piece of rock.
But I would need to move away without disengaging, basically.
Can he
The
teleport?
bonus action is for the
And then he can cast spell direction.
Yeah, that's right.
Use my action.
So, unless you tell me otherwise, I will do something with him. Yeah. So my silver against the same dude in front of him.
You need to move away without
Hits.
disengaging.
Can you teleport?
No, doesn't hit because it's a saving throw and it succeeded. No, it doesn't do anything.
I will use my action,
Who's next?
unless you tell me otherwise, I will do something with him.
I attempt to attack the goblin in front of me once again.
The same dude. It's
I get 16.
no, doesn't.
16 hits.
Which one? The same one I attacked or?
No, I don't know. You attack the one in front of me.
No, I could get it.
Wait, which one did you attack?
You didn't specify in the beginning, so I assume it will be the one in front of you now.
Left or him? I'm just attacking the one in front of me.
You are attacking the one in front of
Get
you.
it once.
Yes. So this one is undamaged so far.
That's 7 points of damage. And I will use...
What did you get on the hit from?
16.
Wait, which one?
And how many points of damage?
7 points of slashing.
Okay.
And I'm going to use Sonic Strike.
Okay.
So I'm trying to and I take 4 points of force damage as well. I will use
4 points of force. So total of 11.
16.
So, as you prepare to take on the goblin in front of you, you mutter something underneath your breath. You channel your mental energies into the blade. However crude this sword you're wielding is, you somehow infuse it with psionic energies and it lights up with a silverish glow for a second, as if mimicking the prowess of a proper Githyanki silver blade. And you swipe it down, slashing across its entire front. The goblin shrieks in pain, and as you follow up with a second strike, you also hit it, though a bit more lightly this time, dealing force damage in the process. Who is next?
This is the one
No, the guy who he was attacking was the one over here.
I think he was here.
So this guy didn't move. Only ate the other one.
Which one is the
Him. Okay.
No, the guy who he was attacking was the one over here.
He takes a swipe at you. At the last second, his mace doesn't hit you. Three. No, sorry, I think 4 at Jiva. Yeah, level 5 at Jiva. I see.
And I cast Ray of Sickness.
On that goblin, okay?
It's 19.
19 hits.
Will create damage. He is poisoned for the next turn. No, we're supposed to.
Ray 1 of 6.
14 poison damage.
Oh, Wow, alright. And that guy was unharmed, right, so far. So, as the goblin takes a loose shot at you, you manage to evade its strike. And as you rear up against the donkey and Vidas, whose back is now basically hitting yours, he tries to fight all this clamor of goblins, you curse the goblin, who's about to come after you. Yes. You utter something incomprehensible, but you see the goblin for a second there take a strike towards you and then retch over, vomiting bile and whatever other contents are in his stomach, to the point where he has fallen to the ground, retching almost his intestines up. He looks almost dead, except for the fact that he is slowly trying to crawl his way towards you. He is now prone because of the sickness within you. Who's next? Is Sayo or there you go. Constitution, what's your DC? So I failed, so now I have disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. Yeah. The other goblins, unfortunately, the ones who are in front of you do not see that goblin, given that there's a rock in between. Who's next?
Thanks is next.
Thanks, I'll give it to you.
That was very nice. Behind the goblin, I can't pass.
You can move through the tree, it will be difficult though.
It will be difficult, so it counts as 2, no?
That's up.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
But you have to navigate, you can't move diagonally.
Thanks, I'll give it to you.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I can't pass.
I'm positioning myself. Okay, 5. Because I can't stand on that side.
So it's 1, 2, 3.
Navigate, you can't move.
X time.
Go ahead. Exile is fun time.
Not interesting. So that would be
20 hits. I'm just thinking whether you've already dealt damage on this goblin.
No, I'm still attacking the same one.
And you've already dealt damage to it or not?
Yes.
You remember how much? Okay.
So that would become interesting damage.
So as you navigate around the tree, the goblin comes towards you. And for a second then you're playing peekaboo behind the tree. The goblin, where are you at? And you see the goblin, the dwarf vanishing to the other side, the fourth, you lob off its head, you kill it.
So that would be 15 points of damage.
Who's next?
So as you navigate around the tree, you guys are towards you. And for a second,
I
you see the goblin
No, good
on
point.
the other side.
Who's next?
The other side. The fourth.
Okay, got your cover. Sorry. And Jane.
there's only this is open. He's
His spear is armed towards you, and he keeps repeating, move it, Euban, down the wall.
and the other one.
The other one is cheating away your weapons.
Now I comply with the goblins' orders. So why don't
There's only.
No, over, down the wall to the crack over there. You stupid fool! You got to give full basic instructions. I know my English isn't that well, but no, to the tree. Where are you moving? Move your ass.
The
trees are
okay. Actually, can I go down close and walk on my knees?
You can do whatever you want.
Can I go down close, just up and
As he's going down, he says, get up.
and then zero.
You didn't appreciate 100% of your ginger testing waters. And so far. The tree is difficult, so far 20. No, you are right, sorry. So 5, 10, 15, huh?
25. And he moves it.
Yes, he does follow you. He's exactly behind you.
That's fine.
Yeah, through the rubble. Okay, who is next?
The tree is so far 20.
Okay. So the goblin behind you is also still poking you behind your back, and now he gives you the order to, on your next turn, lay down on the ground completely prone, face down. And he tells you to do this beside this tree trunk over here. He will use his reaction to follow you or otherwise attack you if you don't comply. This gobble right here will... well, he is wounded, so he's going to shelter as well. So he will... 1, 2, 3, 4...
And it tells you to do this
So
besides this
actually,
bonus action surge just
take cover here.
or otherwise attack you if you don't comply.
Okay.
This gobble right here will...
This goblin will shift over here. This one will also do the same. One of them will fire into Craven, the other will fire into Vitus. The two of you do not have cover, because I am going to try and hit the donkey as well. So, starting with you. No, because imagine, the donkey usually gives you cover if, say, there is an ally of his in front. So he is trying his best not to hit the donkey, that's why he has cover. In this case, you don't care. So, if the shot goes through, doesn't hit your AC, fine. If it's above the donkey's AC, it hits the donkey. So, what's your AC? 19. It doesn't reach that high, but once more it goes through the donkey.
So he is trying his best.
So the donkey takes 5 more points of damage. That is a good point, because at this... No, not 5. So in total now it's taken 13, so actually it would be a good point to look it up if you can.
So what's your AC?
The second gobble will fire against Craven. 15. The goblin does not hit you, the arrow flies wide.
So now it's taken 13, so actually it would be a
You don't have a cleric, that's the problem.
The second gobble will fire against Craven.
So, this guy will crawl himself behind this rock with at the same time throwing blood. We bought one. No, we bought one. We bought one. How much is it up here? Look it up.
Will crawl himself behind this rock.
Look up how expensive a donkey is.
We have to go to 16 plus and I also want to food.
I remember the food, I don't recall the donkeys.
Look at that.
So, the goblin over there from behind, he will take a shot against Craven. You have light cover then. It crits. I remember saying something about the tree loot.
You will take a shot against Craven. You have
No, Craven, you take 14 points of piercing damage.
It crits.
The arrow crits you. It punches straight through your chest. The wizard falls down into the snow, soundlessly, except for his cry. The goblin, who is wedged between Vitus and Bremen. Now I'm going to put it in its stead. Actually, let's assume this one has run off randomly, right? Since it wasn't there. So we'll put it on the edge of the table somewhere. So I will roll a d4. So I will roll a d3. No, I will roll a d3. So 1 and 2 it went in that direction. 3, 4, 5, 6.
This one has run off randomly.
So yeah, it's somewhere there.
Since it wasn't there. So we'll put it on the edge of the table somewhere. So I will roll a d4.
So the goblin between the two of you, it will try and attack you. It doesn't hit you. The goblin against not Craven, Trunk doesn't hit. Those two fired. The archer over here will take a shot against.
So the goblin between the two of you, it will try and attack you.
It doesn't hit either. I think that's all the goblins. No, there's the goblin shot. That's it. That is the goblin's turn.
Those fired, the archer over here.
Well, he will do. No, tough as possible is going to be again another waste. Something here. What was Dissonant Whispers?
I listen to first considering the back. So this spurs. One action you target with a creature which you can see. Wisdom saving throw on a 13. It takes 3d6 psychic damage, and it must run away as far as possible.
So who will do it on the guy in front of him? The guy fails it.
So 3d6 psychic damage.
Okay, he takes 7 points of psychic.
And must hit it because the reaction fails move as far as its speed allows it away from you.
Alright, can somebody move it?
And I think they can force an attack for 30.
Though he did use his action to cast the spell.
But the reaction.
You are right. He rolled a 5, it doesn't matter. Who is next?
I attempt to cut down the dig cut and goblin. I roll a 14.
14 doesn't hit.
Wait, it's not down? Oh, okay.
Cut down the dwarf. Dig gun.
Unconscious?
Only 14 damage.
Yes, I'll...
Hey.
Alright. Who's next?
Sorry, 23.
But I did.
You cut off the goblin's head.
Me?
Yeah.
Apart from treating somebody with ale, no.
I can throw penalty.
Ale or axe.
Wise word. So what I do is I look up and see these goblin archers very confused. And as I finish my laugh, I rush towards them. So movement. Okay. And as I finish my laugh, I rush towards. So it would be on this way over here.
Alright. After Drundle. Who is next after Drundle?
I goblin and he's moving up here.
That's it.
I'm using the second duel. The second duel gives me 1 d10 plus 3. I get 30 HP back.
Okay.
As fast as your little dwarf looks.
The goblin is shrieking behind you.
I turn on the goblin. I perform a grappling attack.
Whoa. Okay, so first of all, it will take its reaction as you turn around to grapple it. It doesn't hit you. And grappling it against one another.
Sorry.
It's strength from your end, or it's strength or dex from my end. When you're using dex.
So, first of all, we'll take a reaction as you turn around.
Yeah, I think it's grapple. Strength. That's 19.
Ooh, beats it.
Okay. And when I grapple the goblin, I perform. I use an action surge and I perform a triple attack to throw. So first action. That's 14 plus
Hits.
5, 19, okay. Yeah, I think that's good damage, and this is another strike, right?
It is, so it will be the 4.
For a
But yeah, you have to start. What's also the damage on it?
so
That's for
Yeah.
okay.
can I use better maneuvers when I don't hold them?
Yes.
That's plus
But yeah, you have to start.
that is 8, 9. Wait, strength 100, strength
Yes.
9 plus 3, that's 12 damage.
No, 12 damage on it. I'm trying to think for the life of me whether that goblin is injured yet or not, but I don't think he was. That one is definitely injured. That one, though, I think is fresh. So you deal 12 points of damage.
And I think that it is effectively prone. On a fail, it is not prone.
That fails it. So you turn around with such ferocity that the goblin is terrorized before it can even retaliate by jabbing its spear into you. You grab its spear, throw it to one side, then just punch it into the ground, close the ground, and you continue just smashing its bony skull face into the ground. That's right. You are over it, basically, kind of just slamming it into the snow. Who's next? That goblin is going to try and just want to try and break through on the grapple first of all.
DC,
Slamming it into the snow.
DC 13.
13. So it actually manages to break free from the grapple though now.
I was going to try and break through the grapple first of all.
15.
I beat you.
So, strength and the
You are running with strength, but I'm trying to run away from you, so I'm not sure if it's... Is it strength against strength? Because usually when it's in a post-grapple check, the defender can also do it with dex.
but the attacker is still using strength.
You are using strength. I am not sure whether I should be using strength or dex or whether I have a choice.
Creature can use its action to escape. Those who must act on a strength or dexterity contested by your strength athletics.
Strength or dexterity?
So athletics or acrobatics.
Okay.
And he uses athletics.
So what's your total?
17.
Then, okay, what is your modifier?
Plus 5.
So you beat me, because we're all equally. Okay, so it is unable to break free. The goblin over there is seeing that its ally is in danger.
And he uses athletics. So what's your total?
I would say it would want to help its ally, but these are goblins and they are cowardly by nature. So instead of helping the goblin over there, it will actually continue to peer from behind the bushes, and at the same time it tells its friend over there, "Get up, get up, get up! Over, come here, get up!" This guy will get up and he will try and sneak all the way. He'll charge from behind. Can somebody move him? So actually he did stand up, sorry, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Under 12, same as you have. Issa, ma ħidex. Archers, hawnhekk. So I think all 3 of them will let loose against spiders.
Actually, he did stand up, sorry. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
AC? 19, so one of them hits. Second one hits as well.
Archers.
Okay, Mela. First one is 8 points of piercing. Second one is 7 points of piercing. Issa. Does the goblin continue running away because of dissonant whispers?
So, dissonant whispers.
One of 9 damage. Okay. First one is.
No, just use this as a reaction. Let's just use this as a reaction. So now it's back in control, basically.
Okay, so it will move back adjacent to the front. Also, the dwarf in relation to the archer goblin over there. Do you have cover?
From here?
Yeah.
No. Do you have line of sight?
Three lines? Ah, you are right. Okay. Okay, so no, actually Lionel will move behind this tree and it's going to let loose another shot, sorry, against Virus.
Over here?
Yes, and it hits you Virus. It's rolls next die. You take 8 points of piercing damage.
Is there a goblin with actions still there?
No, that's it. The goblin who just moved back against Frank will make an attack roll against you. He crits. Right, Frank takes 8 points of damage.
goblin with its actions?
You have a hidden goal.
The goblin who just.
No, that's the guy who walked off, right?
I'm going to use my reaction.
He moves against you.
Before you go, I'm going to use my reaction to cast
Can you move him?
around front.
Alright.
He's an archer.
Oh, he's an archer. Then I will just roll against you. He doesn't hit him.
He takes 6 points less of damage. So that goes to
I'm going to use my reaction.
Okay, before I said he took what, 8?
I'm going to use my reaction to cast a protective.
Yeah, no, that makes
He's an archer.
Okay, who is next?
So that would be Frank.
6 points less
Frank.
damage.
Well, Frank is going to do Arms of Hadar.
Yeah, maybe I can do what I had.
Guys, Frank عمل Arms of Hadar fuq to the 6 shot on 1 damage. Issa, we have minum għala 1 necrotic damage li naħseb juqtlu. Issa, u li jitħor. Xtam niktar Arms of Hadar jiexiex ma safety? You can't take reactions, okay, until next time. Dak mijiet u li jukor jaqla 2 points of damage. Min imis? Ma nista xeddi. U li dawra 1, 2, 3, 4. Għaddi minn ġo Vajdis 5, 6. Ma jistax un jaqafem. Frank, ħajġi eżat uddini. L-għadda jkun għadhomna. Għamma xemġi kif-rock, sorry. Meċi għallura. L-għadda jkun Għalek għadna ma sadax jgħaddi, issa. Minna ħawna problema, ċem il-tent, ma għu ċarta nisa xegħaddi. Għamma biexiet dejn xismu, il-necromancer biex kwisa ħajna. Ma tistax timxi dajgħin fuq il-ġebel la għanna. U bejn il-kamp u l-jibba ma tistax għannas. No, those are compact like. Għax bdejni għek il-bidu sa marriċ il-bidu għafri. Forsi għax huwa mux tiny little creature compared ma l-għanaj, so okay, fair enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 u 6, ħajġi eżad, dejk emmek. Nah, sorry, shift at the saving throw. You're good. Okay, who is next?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. I get
Sorry, you should keep it.
Let's start.
Who's next?
I'm going to.
Yes.
Unless I got the goblin.
Okay.
That goblin was already wounded, right?
Yes.
I get 12.
That's four.
Yes, so.
I am going to take an action surge. And I'm going to strike again.
Okay.
Okay, that's an 18.
Hit.
That goblin was already wounded, right? Yes.
And I did 8 points of slashing damage.
You hack its head off again. Killing it.
I'm going to
It will no, sorry, well, the dwarf is sniffing heads off. You hacked the first head off the combat.
It is a lack of my move.
Yay, fade into the trees.
Wait, is there any goblins from there? I can't see. No.
again.
Was it stop
Hey, fade into the trees.
Please, bite.
This to me.
the early hours of the morning, those of you who glance through the treetop of the forest, you see a gorilla-like figure running through the snow towards the goblin.
They are fight this
Go ahead.
way. Okay, that doesn't work. Now that I am hidden. Reckless attack. The early hours of the morning, those of you who glance through the tree trunk of the forest.
So that would be a... I hit on the first one, I was aiming for a hit.
Alright. I thought you were ashamed of the rolls that you hadn't even come to mention
It
that.
was an XID.
So damage?
No, not enough. Yes.
So that would be a...
12.
I hit on the first.
No, I suppose goblins come on now for
You
later.
were ashamed of the
One.
rolls that you
You can't see it.
Okay, now how much damage? Alright. You pounce onto the goblin over there who is trying his best to hide behind the tree line. So much so that he himself forgot about it. And you will come barreling towards it, axe in hand, the other one bare, fluffing through the snow until you actually grab the axe and wedge it into the tree line so hard that you
so much.
that you break its ball completely, and using the second attack you bring it down and you slash its chest open. It screams, clutching its wound, blood curling around its fingers, going down to the snow. It takes a few steps away from you, turn right, its eyes bare open against the dwarf that you are.
You break its ball completely.
It's still alive. Goblins, right?
No.
Blood curling around its fingers.
Technically no, he's still on the ground grappled by you. Do you know? And you are not. So yes, you do. I'll be honest with you, it's a bit wasted now because he's already better than beaten, but sure. Yeah, he's dead.
Can I pick up this here?
Yes,
Is it a reaction or
that is a reaction. You have a movement and a bonus action. Good for you.
4, 5, 6, and I try to kill this one.
Alright.
This is the one that has your weapon.
And, okay, after jamming. Goblin. So the goblin who is next to you will attack you.
My AC is 16.
He does hit you. You take. No, sorry. 8 points of bludgeoning damage over. And he was a little bit escape, and he will move away from you. 3, 4, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the archer over there is going to take a shot against Frank. Doesn't hit. It was Frank's AC before I say that. He does hit actually. Frank takes 3 points of piercing. The archer over there is going to take a shot against. Frank has a total of 12, so he's 3 hit points away from being knocked. This goblin will turn around, fires a shot against Jemming. Okay. An archer came from behind you, fire shot, doesn't hit you. Second archer. Archer comes against the wall. You are covered there. The one behind you, yes, missed, but there are 2 more over there. So one of them will fire over the wall. Yes, so what's your current AC? Plus 5, 21, it doesn't hit you. Second archer will take a shot against Frank again. So Frank is unconscious. There's also the goblin against you, so he will use his improvised fist to try and get back at you. He rolls a natural 1, so I will give you a free attack of opportunity as you make sure it will be like a free attack, like a reactionary attack. It will consume your reaction since you didn't use it.
There's also a goblin against you.
If I remove him as well, he is that basically, not even need to roll.
So I will give you a free attack of
Who's
opportunity
next?
as you
Goblin, get out!
like a reactionary attack.
So this was
The goblins. No, Frank, that's it. That's a 4, it's a failure. Who's next?
So now it is
That's it. Can you put him down? Yeah.
Okay, so.
Trying to think of what I can do here. There's nothing on this list. There are how many goblins left? 4. Okay. So I remove.
They don't have cover, no. Yes, because there's the second tree in between.
Ah, okay. So
It will be light cover though.
if I move like this,
This one won't have.
and from here, you will have this one.
Yes, it will.
Okay. Then I take out my hands.
That's 30 feet, right?
Yeah. No way.
Or 20, I think.
It's more than the first thing.
So at that point, I think you are either rolling with disadvantage or there's a penalty to the amount of damage. I think it's disadvantage though, with that round weapon. It's what, 2040? 6. If you really, then for sure you don't have enough range.
But next time,
Yeah, of course. Which one? Go ahead.
I get 10.
10 does not hit. The axe falls short. Who's next?
The one I can see without any cover. Go ahead.
No. You are 2-1. Who's next?
She acts falls That's fine. Who's next?
Just to the dwarf materializing on the battlefield next to goblins. From my point of view, I don't see anything there. Just a dwarf appearing from the tree line. Alright, okay, you stay there. Interesting.
Dwarf materializing with the battlefield next to goblins.
Just going on.
Dwarf appearing from
Okay. Do you do anything else? The goblin, he has realized that you are there, doesn't show it yet. Who is after Drunga?
So now it is
I rush after the goblin, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I attack the goblin
Besides, you realize that you are there and doesn't show it yet.
with my spear.
Who is excellent?
Ooh, that's 24.
Hits.
Um,
You don't need to roll damage, it was on 1 hit point. It's dead.
and I pick up my equipment.
That's your reaction, you pick that up, okay?
That's basically it.
Okay, who's next after Jamin? Goblins. So, Archer will take a shot against you, Jamin. Doesn't hit you. Those two archers over there will try and take 2 shots against you. You have light cover, so that makes your AC 21, right? Nala. So one of them flies by, but the other one thuds into the arrow, the tree stand in front of you. The goblin over here, noticing you and your here's Johnny impression, tries to hit you, but the arrow does not find purchase. Okay, that's the goblins. Correct, success. 1-1. Who is next?
Here's Johnny. Tries to hit you, but the arrow does not find purchase. Okay, this is
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, you're one behind. Then it's pick one. It's one time. Eżatt, mela għandek imxi. That's if you're moving through the tree. It's difficult. Eva.
3, 4,
5, 6.
5, 6.
No. The one behind. 2, 3.
3, 4, 5, 6.
if you're moving through the tree, okay, 1. Five, 6.
Okay. Now, instead, what I will do is wait. I'm just going to jump 35 feet. I'm going to move I can't move like this, no?
You can't move between the stone and the camp either.
And then I move like this.
Okay. Do you do anything else?
And throw it towards the zone.
Okay, go ahead.
1, 2, 3. No,
It's good, yes.
I can't move like this, no?
It's good disadvantage or?
No, you don't have, right? Because it's within short range.
I think so, just to confirm.
1, 2,
It's fine.
4, 5 actually.
I can move here.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then move back.
Okay.
With my next movement, so I'm going to do that.
No, it's more than good, yes.
Here will only 3 choices.
No, the X for sure. It's 2 hand axes less.
Within short.
Let's saving throw.
I think so. Just for my double check my.
Very nice. Yes, you are up.
Very nice.
That's all.
You wake up, and all direction you hear the shrieks of dying goblins, the yells and curses coming from Jermaine as he hunts down his loot. But then, as you come to your senses, you focus on the tree line. What's that? A close-up of a dwarf with a very wicked grin and an even sharper axe in his hand.
one direction.
Yeah. Okay. Can you actually do actions when you wake up? But does he have like his? Okay. Go ahead. Go for it.
Can you actually do actions when you wake up?
12 was not hit. Still fumbling from the sudden miracle, you unfortunately do not cast the spell correctly and it does not go off. Who goes next?
Escaped. Fumbling from the sudden miracle. You unfortunately.
It's 2 dice, yes. So it's 2d12, right?
Modifiers are just a single one.
That's right.
Even the range modifier.
Yes.
So. Yes. So that is
12 damage plus modifiers.
no, that's 12. That's because I got the one answer.
And your modifiers are? And he wasn't injured that much, so. He is axe shafted. Who's next?
So, Jermaine.
So,
Yes, to roll this out.
I saw it here and I wanted
To roll this out.
2, 3, Right.
To your disappointment, unfortunately, you're not collecting XP per kill. They are shared between the teams.
This is actually perfect, just share it.
This is the next person in the world.
This is recreation of the time. The magic goblins. My niche. You use your reaction to unsheath it, and yes, go for it. So, in the subsequent turn, did you? Okay, you didn't specify, but I'll assume you unsheathed your sword. You sheathed back your sword and shield.
I'm going to go on.
No, he has currently the sword and shield in hand, right? From when you pick them up.
So can I sheathe my sword and throw it? Or would it?
So you have to drop a weapon. It won't cost anything, and then as a free action, take out the axe.
And then I throw it.
So what do you have in hand at the moment?
I sheathe it.
Okay, so you drop your sword. Good. This way, if you sheath it, it is a free action.
But you can pick it up next turn as a free.
As well.
Okay, yeah. I was thinking of my hand actually wanted.
No, so to unsheath an axe, that is a free action. So since you have already a sword and a shield in hand, you have to drop something to the ground. So you drop the sword.
That's why if you cheat it, it is a free action.
Yes, but he is trying to do both.
So, the both would be an action, or?
In that case, yes.
So,
Which I won't suggest. But you can still throw the sword to the ground. And using your free action, take the axe out, and then as an action,
I
shove
think
it.
I'm still going to just dash.
Okay. Anything else?
That's my action.
After Jermaine. So that goblin over there will use an improvised weapon against you to try and hit you. AC?
18.
18. It hits you with a punch, and you take 1 point of damage. The goblins over there, one will fire an arrow shot against Vidas. It doesn't hit you. The other one will try and fire a shot against you. You've lost your mage armor, but you are in cover of the stone over there, so you have +5, which is a total of. I don't think it hits, not rolled very poorly. The last goblin over there will make an improvised weapon against you as well. Hits. And this is with advantage, right? Just in case. You take 1 point of damage. Little counter, right? Malta. Who is next?
After the goblin is Bremen.
No, let's saving throw. 3, that's 2, 1, 2. Who's next? After Krank?
After Krank, it's Vagabond.
The sound we made a reflection. That's 1, 2. It's fine. It's like my sword.
Matthew, pika. Bidla l-angle, jew ġiba minn wara adrenaline, jekk jitik il-wire, jew bidla minn naħa l-oħra.
Fuck it, it's fine.
Well, yeah, most man get as much as you can from the table. So, sorry, Vitus, what did you get?
I got it.
19 hits.
These were wounded before, right?
No, they are fresh.
Then I deal 11 points of slashing damage.
Okay.
And I use my Psionic Strike. Further enhance the damage by 8 points of force.
He's dead.
So I get a level of 19 points.
You rush towards the goblin over there with your sword. You don't have a sword, right? With an axe?
No, I don't have a sword.
As you charge the goblin blade held over your head, held high, you charge it, and combined with the momentum of your charge, as well as using your psionic focus, you pummel the goblin into the wall.
And I also know which is a monster, so rain charges.
Momentum of your charge.
Okay,
As well as
who is next?
your psionic focus, pummel the goblin into the wall.
And
Yes.
I also use my
Okay.
bonus action, which is once per short rest to regain 1.
It's 50-50 now.
I like
Place
Who's next? Yep.
So that is from
place the
Hits. I think so.
But I also deal another 13 points of damage.
Stun.
So that is from
Okay.
So this was here.
What else are you doing? Sorry?
Can I jump over this?
It costs you an action to jump over that wall.
But I can take an action since I attack.
An action or a bonus action, we said. So if you haven't used your bonus,
So. No. So there is no need for one, two, three, four.
emphasis on the gorilla.
okay. Who's next?
He jogs kind of slowly towards the door.
Fair enough.
Not yet.
Emphasis on the gorilla.
Very nice.
Yeah, let's perform a quick attack. So he has to make a strength save. DC 13.
Succeeds.
Okay. And I give it an extra 8, 5, 13, plus another 5, 82. Yeah.
You turned to goblin!
As the least.
Shivering steps from the rubble wall, blood fell on his blade as he steps over the corpses of goblins. Alright. Who's next? Zero, how are you? He doesn't know he is alone, so. But actually, he does see three monsters who's flanking him. So, bonus action, and he will.
So he will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
And now our moment of truth.
Frank?
Goodness.
First, camping tree casualty. Who is next? Yes. What do you do? You check on his vitals, only to realize that the halfling's pulse has stopped beating. And that is where we will end tonight's session of D&D. We will see you next week.